We'll do the roll one time before the applicants can begin. So I'm just reaffirming attendance here. And I'm going to go through the whole list, even people who were absent before. Evelyn Ascona, Charlotte McNair,
Here.
Okay. Yahaira Torres,
Here.
John Zimmerman,
Here.
Michael Toblin,
Here.
Carla Castaneda,
Here.
Michael Belvin,
Here.
Matt Ferguson,
Here.
John Cox.
Here. All right. So
John
then
Cox,
we'll
I
go-
didn't hear you say yes. Can you just say yes?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
All right, there you go. All right. So we still have the 8
Did you call Nancy Coppola?
here. Oh,
I know she's not here.
Nancy Coppola. There we go. Sorry about that.
So good.
Got
All right. So we'll move on to the public hearings. We'll do 89 Bayard Street LLC, 8991 Bayard Street, Block 19, Lot 3.01, ZB 2021-04. Preliminary and final site plan application with D and C variance to construct an approximately 47,767 square foot, 6-story mixed-use building containing 1 ground floor office unit, 45 resident units, and 12 on-site parking spaces. Zoning Board C-4, Downtown Commercial Office, Tom Kelso, Esquire. Arvin, has all the proper notice been completed in this application?
It has, and this board does have jurisdiction.
All right, and I'm just going to ask any board member, does any board member have any conflict with this application? All right, I didn't hear anybody speak up, so I'm going to take it as a no. Mr. Kelso?
Yes, members of the board, Thomas F. Kelso on behalf of the applicant, 89 Bayard LLC. As the chair has just indicated, this is an application for preliminary and final site plan approval with both D and C variances to construct a mixed-use 47,000 approximately square foot building, which contains a ground floor mixed use plus residential above. The building itself contained a total of 45 residential units, and they consist of 2 studio units, 31 bedroom units, and 13 two-bedroom units. They also contain a rooftop elevator lobby, a mezzanine gym space, and rooftop amenity deck and green roof. The property is located in the C4 zone where the proposed mixed use is permitted. We are seeking a series of variances and design waivers, and I want to take a few moments to go over briefly the nature of the variances because I think it's helpful for the board to understand them up front in order to get a perspective once I bring my witnesses forward for testimony. And just so you know, we will have 4 witnesses. We will have our civil engineering witness first. We will have our professional architectural witness to go second. We will then provide traffic testimony through our traffic engineer. And then finally, professional planning testimony, hopefully in support of the variances that we're requesting. So the 2D variances that we are looking for are a variance for height and a variance for FAR. But this application is somewhat unique because the standards that we are required to follow here for purposes of compliance with the ordinance are based upon the fact that this property is less than 10,000 square feet. So the standards that are being followed are standards that assume a 5,000 square foot lot between 5,000 and 10,000. The interesting issue here is that the lot itself is actually 9,979 square feet. It's actually only 21 square feet short of the 10,000 square feet. Under those circumstances, if it was a 10,000 square foot lot, the standards that we would be subject to would be different. So I want to go through those briefly with you because it's our belief that this lot, for all intents and purposes, should be viewed by the board when it's in its deliberations to consider these variances, should consider the standards at the 10,000 square foot lot rather than the 5,000 square foot lot. Once again, we're only 21 square feet short of a 10,000 square foot lot. And I'm assuming that the surveyor wasn't cross-eyed, so unfortunately, we're just a little short. The variances that, the D variances, as I mentioned before, are one of height and an FAR variance. If the standard in the 5,000 square foot lot is a 40-foot high building is the maximum height. We are proposing a 67-foot height for this building. However, if this were considered a 10,000 square foot lot, then the height would be 60 feet. So the difference would then be only a 7-foot difference between the 10,000 square foot lot and the actual height that we are proposing. So we're 7 feet off. I asked the board to take that into consideration when deliberating. The second item is FAR, floor area ratio. If this were to be considered under the 5,000 square foot lot, which is what's before you, the permitted FAR is 4.0 to 1, and we are proposing 4.8 to 1. However, if this were to be considered a 10,000 square foot lot, the permitted FAR is 5.0, in which case our 4.8 would be in compliance. So once again, we look to this as, for all intents and purposes, a 10,000 square foot lot, but we need to be technical in what we actually are applying for. And again, I asked the board to consider that because they're the two most significant variances here. There also is a parking variance. The parking requirement is 45 spaces. We are providing 12 spaces. That is a 33 space deficiency. But as our testimony will show and the documents that are actually on file will indicate, that the New Brunswick Parking Authority has committed up to 45 spaces in the wellness deck for use by residents in this building. And I think, as all of you know, this location is actually just a block away from the wellness garage. There's also one other item with regard to parking that I wish to point out to you, because I don't know to the extent that the board is familiar with it. But the city council in, I believe, December, enacted a new ordinance, which is called the PILUP ordinance. PILUP meaning payment in lieu of parking. And this ordinance, which has, somewhat innovative in terms of the city's view of parking and parking variances and deficiencies, provides a mechanism by a calculation which is identified in the ordinance, it calculates a parking deficiency, which isn't always exactly the same as what the variance might be. And based upon that ordinance, we are actually 29 spaces in deficiency. What the ordinance provides for is a payment in lieu of that parking. And that payment is $5,000 per space. So if the board were to consider this application favorably, my client would be required to pay to the city $145,000, which is intended to go into a trust fund to the parking authority for its use in whatever it deems appropriate, whether it goes into maintenance, supervision, repairs of existing garages, on-street parking. The city has created a mechanism where developers who are seeking these variances and are relying on those garages for the support of their facility, there is a payment that's being required. This, if I understand correctly, if the board were to consider favorably this application this evening, this is actually the first project that would be subject to that pilot payment. And if the board were to look favorably on this application, I'm sure that the city would consider that to be a condition of approval. There is one other variance that we've identified, which is somewhat, once again, unique in relationship to the fact that this property is located in the C4 zone. And the reason that I think it's a little bit, it shows somewhat of an inconsistency in the ordinance that really is not intentional, but I think it has developed over time. And that is that properties that under the design guidelines, there's a requirement for a 5-foot landscaping buffer between the adjacent property line and the facility being developed. There happens to also be a parking setback of that we provide at 1 feet from the property line, where the requirement's 3 feet. Where the inconsistency is here is that in the C4 zone, there are no setback requirements. And this building that is being developed is being built to the property line, so that the parking, even though there is a 3-foot setback, is actually under the building itself. So the building walls are actually what act really as the buffer against the adjacent properties. So although technically, again, I think this is a technical deficiency, we believe that the variance for the landscaping buffer and the design guideline waiver for the parking setback are really subsumed in the fact that it complies with the setback requirements under the C4 zone. I would also indicate there are a few additional design guidelines which my professionals will get into. There's a lot light uniformity with regard to the minimum requirement for lot lighting. There's also a 2.6-foot candle lighting at the property line where the maximum is 0.5. And there's one existing condition, which is there is no separation between the curb cut on Kirkpatrick Street and the intersection of the property line, whereas 10 feet is required. Again, the engineer and our traffic people will testify to it, but that happens to be an existing condition. It's an existing driveway, which this application in this project will utilize for purposes of egress from the property site. That's an overview of what the application entails. I thought it was important for me to go over the circumstances under which particularly the D variances have been created. And I ask you to keep in mind that the lot, for all intents and purposes, it's a 10,000 square foot lot, but technically 21 feet short of that. With that as an overview of the application, unless anyone from the board has any questions for me, I would call my first witness.
Does any member of the board or board professionals have any questions of council? Seeing none, go ahead with your first witness, Mr. Kelso.
All right, thank you. At this point, I would call Mr. Jake Modesto for testimony.
Mr. Modesto, can you please state your name, spell your last name for the record?
Yep. Everyone hear me? Jake Modesto, last name Modestow.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Floor is yours.
Thank you. Mr. Modesto, you are a licensed professional engineer of the state of New Jersey, is that correct?
That is correct, yes. And my license is in good standing.
And you are, in that capacity, familiar with the application before the board this evening?
I am, yes.
And you are the civil engineer responsible for the development of the site plan, I believe, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
If then, could you give the board the benefit of your professional qualifications and experience?
Sure. As I stated before, I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. That license is in good standing. I do have multiple other engineering licenses throughout the Northeast and Midwest. I graduated from Stevens Institute of Technology with a Bachelor's of Engineering. I've worked on over 100 land development applications, many in similar size and scope as a project in front of you tonight. And I've been qualified as an expert witness in over a dozen New Jersey municipalities.
Thank you. I offer Mr. Modesto for, as a qualified professional.
We will accept him as a professional.
Thank you. Mr. Modesto, if you could then, rather than me ask you specific questions, I'd ask you to go through the process of describing all the civil engineering aspects of the project itself. And in that particular case, I'd also, where appropriate, to describe the variances and the waivers as hopefully I described them accurately just a few moments ago.
Yeah, Mr. Gauss, you did a great job on that. Is it possible to share my screen? So I can just share maybe a visual for the submitted plans?
Now, just to clarify, whatever you're going to share has already been posted on the website?
This is the submitted documents prepared by my office, dated 10/11/2021.
They are the ones, I believe, Dan.
Okay.
Yep. And so this was, when we reviewed this property from a site civil standpoint, we evaluated this using construction drawings and then stormwater management, which were all provided as part of the application, just to generally locate the board with the property. It's located at 89 to 91 Bayard Street. Looking at the cover page from the submitted plans, north of the page is the top. You can see the property highlighted here on the cover page, showing a thick black line surrounding the parcel. We have frontages on both Bayard Street and Kirkpatrick Street, basically essentially making this a double frontage lot. You can see it's a little bit more unique to its neighbors. It's a just under a 10,000 square feet, which again, that number is very important. So it's 9,979 square feet, 21 square feet short of 10,000 square feet. Currently located within the downtown commercial office district, C4. Just for the board's understanding, all the properties around us are also located within that same district, both the north, south, east, and to the west. To the north, we actually have the wellness parking facility, located approximately 150 feet as the crow flies to the north of Patterson Street. And then the Middlesex Municipal Building, which would be across Kirkpatrick Street, directly to the east. Just gonna flip over to, this is the demolition plan prepared by my office. Same data as what I talked about before. Currently on site, the site is 100% impervious coverage. And it includes two buildings, both standing at 2.5 stories in height. As I talked about before, there is an existing driveway or panhandle that does extend, we'll call it from the main body of the property, which fronts Bayard Street to Kirkpatrick Street. That's approximately 10 feet wide. That's an existing drive that allows for access both to our property and the two properties to the north, and the adjoining property, we'll call it directly to the east of our proposed development. Now, what the applicant is looking to do is to raise everything on site and construct a 6-story mixed-use building. Really what we're looking at is 8 stories of use. This will include a cellar, and then we will have, we'll call it the ground floor, which will consist of just under over 1,000 square feet of office retail space, a lobby, 12 parking spaces. And then above that will be 45 units comprised primarily of 31 bedrooms, 13 2-bedrooms, and 2 studios. On top of this, again, our 12 parking spaces within that ground floor retail space. We'll have our entrance. This is an ingress only off Bayard Street. This will be approximately 10 feet wide coming in from Bayard Street. Access to this will be monitored via a gated mechanism. It'll basically have a puck as you pull forward. You'll be able to, there'll be a puck given to those residents and office retailers using the spaces that allow the roll-up window to, or the roll-up door to pull up, and people will be able to enter from Bayard Street into the 12 parking spaces. We do have a designated loading zone for loading, or really move in, move out vehicles anticipated for the facility. There'll be a clear height of 11.6 as you enter in from Bayard Street. We'll have 188 parking spaces. We will also have 3 EV stations. One of them will be designated to the office retail space. The remaining will be to the residents or whoever is going to be using the 12 parking spaces located on site. As we move to the north side of the plan, we have the garage and recycling room. We have 32 bike parking spaces, we'll call in the upper left. And then we'll have the exit or the egress only drive. So basically maintaining that existing access, but really funneling our access through the property to that existing 10-foot strip that we talked about, or the panhandle, going to Kirkpatrick Street. So that is the overall proposed top-down view. We are requiring several variances. As far as the D variances, as we talked about before, it's a 67-foot building height where 40 is permitted. We have a building ratio or floor area ratio of 4.8 where 4 is permitted. Again, if we had taken this and we added those 21 square feet, equivalent to two 52-inch TVs, maybe it's a good reference, or 2 folding tables, equivalency of adding that to the property, we would have 5 permitted within that 10,000 square foot district where that variance would go away. Those 12 parking spaces I did talk about on site, 45 are permitted. There is an agreement in place to the wellness facility approximately 150 feet north of the property that would allow us to lease as needed those parking spaces to overcome that deficiency. There'll be a variance for landscaping and planting on site. We are planting a street tree on Baird that doesn't interfere with any of the access in and out of the property. But we are not providing that 5 feet. We are providing, though, where feasible, bump outs to allow for the adjoining properties utilities. They do protrude into our parcel, but we are not removing those. We are accounting for them within the design of the building, at least from a top-down plan view perspective. We are accounting for not impairing on those. There are waivers for lighting when it comes to illumination over the property line where 0.3 foot candles is permitted, or we are proposing it for a uniformity ratio where 1 foot candle is required. We're providing 2.6 foot candles over the property line, primarily located actually at the exit. We've actually added 2 exterior lights to illuminate for security purposes only. So the areas that will be illuminated or creating the areas, we'll call it over the maximum permitted, are all in the areas that are already being utilized as parking. And again, lighting that for security purposes, and then easy noticeability for cars exiting the site. In addition to that, we do have the existing nonconformity, which is on Kirkpatrick Street, which talks about the driveway distance from a property line. Currently, the entire, we'll call it 10-foot panhandle area is encompassed by that restriction. So no matter what we do as far as an access and maintaining that access, there would be the requirement for this variance. And then the parking setback, we're providing approximately a 1 foot parking setback, a little bit less in certain areas where 3 feet is required. Now, all these parking spaces will be screened by the building itself, so you won't be able to tell between 1 and 3 feet. There'll be a solid brick mass or building mass between the parking spaces and the adjoining parcels. As far as stormwater, we will be implementing a 1,200 square foot green roof that will overall decrease the amount of water leaving the site under the 2, 10, and 100-year storm events. All the utilities will be proposed on Bayard Street going into the building. That includes gas, water, sewer, and electric. I think that generally covers the proposed conditions from a down site plan perspective. We did receive and reviewed the letters from Big Nell and the city engineer dated 9/8 and 8/30. I can answer any questions, Mr. Kelso, the board would like.
Yeah, I have no further questions for Mr. Modestal, if the board wishes to direct.
At this time, I'll ask any board member or board professionals if they have any questions or comments for this witness. Any member of the board or board professionals have any questions for this witness? Seeing none, Mr. Kelso, you can move on to your next witness.
All right, thank you. At this time, I will call Ms. Mukti Bajaj for testimony. I hope I said that right.
Yeah, it's correct.
Ms. Bajaj, can you please state your name, spell your last name for the record?
Yes, it's Mukti Bajaj. It's MUKTI, and last name is Bajaj, BAJAJ.
Ms. Bajaj, do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
The floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Ms. Bajaj. You are a licensed professional architect of the state of New Jersey, is that correct?
Yes, I am.
And in that capacity, you are responsible for the development of the overall plan and layout of the building that's being proposed this evening.
That's correct. Yes, I am.
Could you give the board then the benefit of your professional qualifications and experience?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Mukti Bajaj. I'm the principal at Mukti Architecture. My office is in Jersey City. I have presented on Jersey City board multiple times and in Secaucus. For New Brunswick, this is the first time. And I have 25 years experience in architecture. And my license is current.
I would offer Ms. Bajaj as a qualified professional to provide testimony.
We'll accept her as a qualified professional.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and share the screen, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah. So this is the facade rendering. I just started with this page just to give you the overview of the entire building. This was part of the whole set which was submitted before. So 8991 Bayard Street, the block is 19 and the lot is 3.01. This particular block is in C4 zone, that is downtown commercial zone. Like Mr. Kelso mentioned before, and even Jake, that the lot size is 9,979 square feet, and we are short of 21 square feet from 10,000 square feet. This particular lot is a slight irregular lot with the main frontage is on Bayard Street, and we have a 10-foot easement towards the Kirkpatrick side. This is a short walk from the New Brunswick station and also from the wellness garage, parking garage. This one here. So this, what we are proposing here, there's an existing two family on this lot. The main front entrance for these two families is from Bayard Street, and they have a parking in the rear of the building, and the access is from this particular easement, which is also part of this lot. And this particular lot covers up the entire 100% of the lot coverage, this particular two buildings. What we are proposing, or what is being proposed on this lot, is to demolish these two structures and propose a 6-story building with one small office space and a 45-unit residential units. The gross area of the first floor, which almost covers up the 100% of the lot, is 8,370 square feet, and second to fourth floor is 8,039 square feet. The fifth and sixth floor is set back, or the step back of 7 feet, and the gross area is approximately, the gross area is 7,640 square feet. There's a green roof being proposed and a small cellar for mechanical and janitorial use. So on this project, what we are requesting is the two variances has been mentioned before. One is the FAR. So if this lot was 10,000 square feet, we would have been in compliance, whereas the FAR required is 5, and this proposed FAR on this project is 4.8. Also, regarding the height, the total height of the building proposed to the roof is 67 square feet, and the permitted height is 40 feet for 5,000 square feet. But at the same time, for 10,000 square feet, it will be 60 feet. We are in excess of 7 square feet, which I will just go through when we are explaining the elevation. So A1 sheet, which is a cellar plan, is a small cellar with, towards a Bayard Street. It has electrical room, sprinkler room, gas meters, elevator machine room, and a janitorial closet and one staircase access. This is the first floor plan. The main entrance of the building is from Bayard Street. The entrance lobby will have one elevator and one staircase, and access for the garage. Also, smart mailboxes and a package room. The access or the main entrance will have a key secured panel system or the building access system. One of them, which we have specified on the drawing, is Butterfly MX, but that can be a similar system. The way this system works is that it can be accessed either with a key fob, key card, or a smartphone. Even a normal phone would work in case if there's no smartphone available, but that will be without a video panel or without a video option. At all the access points, there will be a keypad which will be provided by the same system, and the access will be controlled by that keypad. Every time anybody tries to access the building, there will be a timestamp. There will be a date and time stamped, and the image will be captured. The image captured is kept in the database for almost 365 days. On this first floor, also we have an entrance for the office building, which is a separate entrance from the residential. And the office space is 1,000 square feet, 1,020 square feet. Also, there's a 12 parking spaces being proposed. The ingress of this parking is from Bayard Street, and the egress is from this Kirkpatrick, which is also easement driveway. Out of these 12 parking spaces, 3 parking spaces will have electrical charging stations and 1 handicap parking. Towards the rear of the building, also there are 32 bike parking with access from the main building lobby and also from the Kirkpatrick side. There's a double door which we proposed here. The garbage recycles room with the garbage chute, and the garbage access or recycle will be from Kirkpatrick side. In the front of the building, there are the neighboring windows, and there were meters on the east and west side of the property. So the building has been set back 4 feet from those windows and the meters. There's one entrance. There's a door which is on the east side of the property. This particular door has access only from the garage. It doesn't have any access from the side of the building. So this is just the exit from the garage only. So the upper floor plans from 2nd to 4th floor, they are almost similar layout. Every floor has 9 units, out of which 6 are 1 bedrooms and 3 are 2 bedrooms. The square foot area of the units range from 610 square feet to 910 square feet. Each unit has a laundry, a hot water heater system, and the heating and cooling will be provided by a split system. Also, every floor has a garbage recycle room with a garbage chute. The 5th and 6th floor has a step back of 7 feet from the front. And again, on the 5th and 6th floor also, there are 9 units. It's just there are 2 studios and 6 1-bedrooms and 2 2-bedroom units. The layout are pretty similar with the garbage recycle chute and washer dryer in the units, hot water heater, and a split system for heating and cooling. The roof deck has been proposed with a mezzanine gym area, which is approximately 1,280 square feet. Roof deck is almost 3,250 square feet. A partial green roof at the back, almost 1,200 square feet. And the condensers for all the units will be on the roof, and they are screened, and they are not visible from any of the streets. These are schematic images just to show the probability of creating a seating area and a pergola system for the roof area. This is the facade. I'll just directly go to the rendering, and also I will talk a little bit about the secured panel system or the security system access panel for the building. So this is the front facade. The surrounding, when we started thinking about the conceptual of this facade, the surrounding buildings in this area, they are pretty much mixed. They have religious buildings, residential buildings, mixed use offices, and also a commercial cupola in the same area. So the area is fairly eclectic as as far as the structures are concerned. To the left of the property, there was a masonry building. Across from the street, there is a new construction which has a stucco on the building with a glass and a metal panels and modern materials. And there were different structures with the different type of sidings. So based on that, what we had to create was something which has a balance of the entire geometry and at the same time giving enough light and difference in the materials. So what we tried to do here was used a traditional brick for the first level and light mist color fiber cement panel for the mid section and the darker tone for the upper level. On the first level, towards the right of the property is the main entrance of the building and the garage entrance. So the front entrance has been recessed 3 feet with the ceiling, recessed ceiling lights and wall lights. So this will create a difference between the office entrance and the main entrance of the building. The clear glass for the office and the lobby and the garage will give a visual, visual surveillance of the street as well. For the mid section, the light mist color panel system was chosen, so it basically gives a lighter tone to the whole mass of the structure. At the same time, these insets were created with the charcoal gray, which is a panel system which has a little insets, and that will create a shadow effect. At the same time, it just breaks up the mass. On the upper floor, which is the 5th and 6th floor, which was stepped back by 7 feet, a darker tone, the same charcoal gray tone of, the brownish gray tone of the panel system was used for the upper portion. And in my opinion, using a darker tone for the upper floor also doesn't make the building look that tall. One of the reasons why we had this excess of 7 feet height was the first floor we had given access for the garage and having a small truck access for the loading area. So we had 11 foot 6 height clear for the first level. Upper floors, we have 9 foot ceiling height, which in my opinion, 9 foot is pretty standard ceiling height, and it gives a little bit for the open layouts of the plans. It will give a little bit of more open, spacious feeling for the units. Plus, we were able to propose a taller buildings, having a lot of light coming in the units as well. And also based on the communication with the structural, we had to give 18 inches of the joist space or the structural's area about each floor, between the 2 floors. Also regarding this building access panel, I just briefly spoke about it. So it will be basically accessed. So there is a video screen in the front. It is accessed either by a key for smartphone or even with the PIN. So in case if the delivery guy is coming in the building, the one-time PIN will be given to that person and he will be able to access only the lobby area. So if that person has to access the elevator or even the garage portion, the access has to be provided to him. He won't be able to just go into the other common areas of the building. So these are the rear facade of the building, which will have a similar material, light mist, either a panel system or a siding, and the first level will be a light gray stucco finish. And this is the east facade and the west facade. It's a similar tone given with a lighter tone of panel and stucco on the first level. There were also consideration about the crime prevention, which what we try to promote is basically giving a wall-mounted emphasis light, LED lights at the entry doors in the lobby with the larger storefronts, and the windows with a clear safety glass with the security cameras will be provided for the garage and for the front portion, the secured intercom system. And I believe that giving this visual or enough lighting will give us some kind of visual command towards the street as well. Garage door was also given with a clear glass that will give a visual flow for the garage space inside. There was some concern. One of the comments was about the entrance for the second staircase from the Kirkpatrick side. So we moved the entrance towards the Kirkpatrick side for the staircase number 2, so that we don't create any hidden areas or in this alleyway over here. And this particular street, which I already discussed, that this door will have an exit only from the garage door. Also, the light will have a motion sensor. And there will be no direct entrance from the garage on this front. I think I pretty much covered up everything. I'm more than happy to answer any questions the board might have.
Thank you, Mukti. That was very thorough. Does the board have any questions for Ms. Bajaj?
This is Matt Ferguson. I have a question.
All right, go ahead, Matt.
Can we go back to the overhead of the ground level with the parking garage? The overhead of the parking garage, sorry. The one with view of the trash room? What's the planned frequency of trash collection for this building? To either the attorney or the architect?
Or perhaps Jake Modesto? I'm not sure the answer to that.
Yeah, I guess I can answer that. It's going to be hauled out to the street all the way on Kilpatrick, and we're anticipating it. It's really on an as-needed basis, but we're anticipating at least once a week.
Yeah, the problem is I'm seeing 9 trash containers in that space for 45 units. We have seen other units in town with not properly planned disposal systems requiring dumpsters on the street. So what would be the required, let's be honest, like 45 units, 9 containers doesn't sound, once a week doesn't sound right to me.
And then and that's going to be one of those situations where it's evaluated, in that situation. If we're already being told that 9's not enough, we did evaluate this from the actual trash generation from other units. I think we're expecting, that number. If it has to be adjusted, it will be adjusted to increase the number of pickups and when trash is actually being allocated. I believe there is also a compactor too as part of this application.
No, I see that, but do we have a commitment that we're not going to have a dumpster on the street in front of the unit, and that if we need 2 or 3 pickups per week, we'll commit to that with the application?
On behalf of the applicant, the answer to that is yes. We certainly would never put a dumpster out there. But if there is a need, we certainly agree to a condition of at least twice a week. But if there's more needed, and if the city identified that, then we would adjust it to more, because this is a private pickup, so we control that.
No, I understand, Mr. Kelso, but I've seen dumpsters on New Street, other streets where they did not plan properly for the trash disposal, and I just see 45 units and 9 trash cans, and it's a concern. But if you're committing to at least 2 and more if necessary, then I'm satisfied with that. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right, is there any other member of the board or board professionals that have any questions for this witness? Seeing none, Mr. Kelso, please call your
Yeah.
next witness.
Yes, at this time, I will call Mr. Andrew Valari for testimony.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mr. Valari, can you please state your name, spell your last name for the record?
My name is Andrew Valeri, spelled V as in Victor, I-L-L-A-R-I.
Mr. Valari, can you please, do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Floor is yours.
Mr. Valari, you are a licensed professional engineer of the state of New Jersey, is that correct?
That is correct.
And I believe your area of expertise is traffic engineering?
Yes, sir.
If you could please give the board the benefit of your professional qualifications and experience.
Certainly. I received my Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from the University of Delaware. I am a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. I've been accepted as an expert in the field of traffic and transportation engineering in front of numerous similar land use boards throughout the state, as well as others throughout the Northeast.
Okay, I would offer Mr. Valari for as a licensed professional engineer with credentials to provide traffic testimony.
We'll accept him as a professional for our engineering and parking.
All right, thank you very much.
Sorry, traffic. Thank you.
Mr. Valari, if you could, I'm going to ask you to just give us an overview of your charge, the basis by which you did your analysis, and if you could, hopefully provide your conclusions with regard to traffic circulation considerations and parking, particularly the parking variance.
Certainly. We were retained to review the subject application with specific focus on the traffic and parking impacts of the same. We did prepare a report that was submitted to the board just for the benefit of the record that was originally dated August 24th, 2021, and then more recently revised on October 12th, 2021. Thinking about where the site is located at this point in the presentation, I'll just summarize to some of the highlights that I see as a traffic engineer. The site is located adjacent to a vast array of types of public transit. You have the New Brunswick train station within a 5-minute walk. You have 10 bus lines within a 5-minute walk. It's a great network of public transit that the city is fortunate to have. I'd also like to point out that this is not a technical term, but in very close proximity, there is the wellness parking garage. It's about a 200-foot walk. As the crow flies, like Mr. Modesto mentioned, it is 150 feet to the north. That provides additional public parking as well. The application, you've heard it at this point before. We have 45 total residential units. We have a very small office that would also take place on the ground floor. And then on the ground level, we would have a total of 12 off-street parking stalls. Also in that garage, we are proposing bike parking, which we think is another benefit to make this a walkable, bikeable community. The industry establishes thresholds for what is a major traffic generator, and I can confirm that this is not that. This is not a major traffic generator. You look at how many vehicle trips are generated over the course of a peak hour. The measuring stick would be, does it generate 100 vehicle trips in an hour? And this project is not that. It is nowhere close. This is a drop in the bucket in the public roadway network, and we do not anticipate any significant adverse impacts on vehicle traffic. The parking requirement that the city sets forth indicates that a application such as this requires 45 total parking spaces. we are proposing 12 off-street. Now, we are also complying with the electric vehicle charging standards and also providing a loading zone underneath the building as well. Mr. Kelso mentioned at the introduction that this is a relatively new application as far as the pilot program, payment in lieu of parking. The applicant has entered an agreement with the New Brunswick Parking Authority for 45 additional parking spaces located in the wellness garage, which is very, very close. So, you know, thinking about the available public transit, the buses, the trains, the ability to live here and get around where you need to go to either to work or other places, you can do so via public transit. We also look at the information that's published by the U.S. Census Bureau for this neighborhood, and it bears out. People that live here are using, and they're taking advantage of the public transit that surrounds them. And also, you know, it almost goes without saying, when you sign a lease for a residential unit, an office, you know what you're getting when you go into it. These are predominantly 1-bedroom units. There's 30 1-bedroom units out of 45. These are not large apartments where you can have a family with 5, 6, 7 family members. On average, we're looking at 650 square feet for the 1-bedroom units. So this is really something that is more indicative of a younger couple, someone that is either working in the area or can get to work via the public transit in the area. So just to conclude, I think that the application is a great opportunity to see this site redeveloped. If we were just 23 square foot larger, we would be compliant on density. So it's not a major traffic generator. The defense of the parking is justified, especially with the payment in lieu of parking agreement that the applicant has entered. So turn it back over to Mr. Kelso, or happy to answer any questions.
I have no further questions for Mr. Valari if the board wishes to address.
All right, at this time, I'll ask any board member or board professionals if they have any questions for this witness.
This is Michael Tublin. I've got a question about the pilot program. So maybe Andrew or Mr. Kelso, you can answer this. So you said it's required 45 parking spots and you guys are doing 12 and putting 33 in the pilot program?
It actually, and I think Dan could probably explain it too, but the city developed a formula for determining how much parking would likely be required here, and it isn't necessarily what the ordinance lays out. So there is a difference between what the city is requiring in the pilot as opposed to what the parking variance deficiency may be. In this case, the calculation that the city, and it's set forth in the ordinance, so it's black and white for every application. We actually would be considered to have a 29 space deficiency rather than a 33 space deficiency. The reason for that, however, is to form the basis to calculate how much the pilot needs to be paid by the applicant itself. So in this case, and I know Dan Dominguez was very much involved in the development of the standards that are in the pilot ordinance, so he could probably supplement what I'm saying. But I think the rationale for the city here was to form a basis under which an applicant which is seeking a parking variance, and particularly in cases where we're utilizing the garages the public garages that may be within the vicinity, they still have a mechanism to be able to have the applicant seeking the variance to pay into a fund that allows the city then to have funding for purposes of maintaining on-street parking, doing supplemental work in the garages, maintenance, repair, perhaps utilizing them to supplement in the garages for the electric charging stations. It's a wide open basis. The applicant's paying into it, and that money is being utilized by the city. So I think it was a way for the city to be able to come to grips with getting some benefit from the developers who are seeking these variances. And certainly it's an obligation. It's not something that it's not negotiated. It's a condition that we are subject to. We're more than happy to pay.
Well, thank you. I was just trying to just figure out where the difference of the 4 parking spots were, because that's $20,000 there. But if the city is saying that you only need 29 to fulfill your requirement, then that's what it is.
Yeah.
Chairman Cox, if I may, Dan Dominguez, I just want to just clarify, as Tom Kelso said, I might be able to shed some light here, if that's
Sure,
okay
Dan.
with you, Chairman Cox.
Absolutely, Dan, please.
Sure. So when we drafted the pileup ordinance a few months ago, the city realizing that, and it's in the findings of the pileup ordinance, the city realizing that that the state standards for parking, the RSIS standards, which are a universal standard, they apply everywhere in the state, whether you're on a farm, in a suburb, or in a dense urban core like New Brunswick. They split the RSIS standard, basically takes the suburban standard and spreads it over everything. So that standard is acknowledged in the pileup that it's not a good fit for New Brunswick. New Brunswick can handle a little less parking than the RSIS standard. That's reflected in the city often giving parking variances and whatnot. So the city created a lower threshold at which the pileup triggers than those RSIS standards, acknowledging that the full RSIS standards probably don't need to be met consistently in the city on city projects. And so you'll end up with situations like this where, it's 29 for the pileup, RSIS says it's 33, and so you'll have that difference, but with the acknowledgement that the 29 is a lot closer to what reality would dictate than what RSIS dictates. So that's why we have a lower threshold in the pileup, because we think it's more realistic.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate the.
And if I just might add to that on the flip side, notwithstanding that we did able to negotiate with the parking authority up to 45 spaces to have available to residents to the extent they're necessary. We don't expect that demand will be anywhere near that, but the parking authority has committed that to us. And I think all of us know that the parking garages, since the pandemic, have been underutilized. And I think the world may show us in the future that may be a permanent situation with more people working from home, and perhaps the demand may even be less in those garages. So I think it's kind of a perfect marriage, particularly when you have a garage that's close to your facility, where we may be able, aside from paying the pilot, which isn't a small amount, also be able to provide parkers in those garages where there may be excess spaces now than maybe would have been thought about a few years ago. So it's kind of a win-win situation for everyone.
Thank you. Mr. Kelso, and those 45 spots that the parking authority is setting aside, if the residents of the building, they would have to purchase them on a monthly basis, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right, thank you. Any other member of the board or board professional have any questions for this witness?
Yeah, I do. Matt Ferguson, just a quick question to Dan. Like, what is the... I'm curious. So the monthly rate for the deck that we're talking about, has that been established?
If I may, Matt, I think you cut off, but if I may, can you hear me, Chairman Cox?
Yes, go ahead, Dan, please.
Yeah. So the going rate, the monthly rate's about $200 a month for parking in the decks.
Got it. No, I didn't know if the ordinance had included a rate. That's what I was curious about.
I think that the rate for parking in the decks is dictated by the parking authority.
Yes, if I might, that's whatever the public rate is, this is not we're not getting any kind of a discounted rate. We're not paying a premium rate. We're paying whatever the public rate is for anyone who wishes to get a monthly space. The pilot is totally different. We're paying a $5,000 per space payment to the city under that ordinance, which is recognizing that we sought and secured a variance should you grant it.
No, thank you, Mr. Kelso. I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned if the public rate is $200 a month and the rate at the building is less than that, that would cause a concern. Do you know what the proposed rate for the building parking rate would be?
I don't know that, but I don't think it's an issue because whatever the rate is, there's 12 spaces. And after those 12 spaces, if there's a further demand, they're going to pay the public rate in the garage.
Well, or they're going to park on the street and cause an issue in town. That's my concern.
Well, whatever the rate is, they're going to be filled. Those spaces are going to be filled. All 12 of those spaces will go because they're going to be the first to go.
No, I understand those will be filled. I just, as someone that lives in town, I'll tell you that people who don't want to pay a monthly rate, they try to park in town on the street and it becomes an issue. So I'm just trying to cause that, to solve that issue.
I would suggest that, although I have not spoken to my client about this specifically, I don't think that they are going to be charging any less than what the public rate is. They're going to be charging the same rate.
Well, or I would request that they charge more and push towards the public rate.
But it's still, well, it still doesn't change the outcome because once those 12 spaces are taken, the other people are going to have to park in the garage, in the public garage.
Well, as long as those have been
if you
secured,
ask them to
we're
pay
okay.
more than, if you ask them to pay more than the public rate, then those spaces could end up being non-utilized, which I don't think benefits anybody. You'd want the spaces to be taken. But in either case, the parking authority committed 45 spaces, which is the amount that's required without a variance.
I appreciate that agreement, so thank you.
All right. Any other questions from the board or board professionals for this witness?
Not for the witness, Yahaira Torres here. I just wanted some clarification. I don't know if Ms. Bajaj said this in during her testimony. The office space at the bottom of the building, is that going to be like a part of like the maintenance or the lobby for the building, or are there going to be other businesses?
I believe it will be other businesses. It's not part of the building.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question or comment for this witness from the staff or professionals? Seeing none, Mr. Kelso, your next witness.
Yes, at this time, I will call my final witness, Mr. Keenan Hughes, for testimony.
Good evening.
Mr. Hughes, can you please state your name, spell your last name for the record?
Yes, it's Keenan Hughes, Hughes.
Mr. Hughes, do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Kelso, I know Mr. Hughes has been before this board many a times in the past. Mr. Hughes, has your credentials changed in any way?
No, my license is still in good standing.
All right, thank you, and we will accept you as a expert witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Hughes, if you could, I'd ask you to go through an analysis of the variances and design waivers were appropriate that you were assigned to do. And hopefully, if you could give an analysis of those variances and give us your conclusion as to the basis under the law that those variances and waivers could be granted.
Certainly, I'm prepared to do that. So just briefly, by way of introduction, this property is obviously located within the downtown, which is very much a mixed-use, walkable context. It is located within the C4 zone, which permits the proposed mixed-use building. And this use is also consistent with what's envisioned in the city's master plan. So as Mr. Kelso described in his introduction, and then also Mr. Modesto listed as part of his testimony, we are seeking relief from the FAR and height provisions for the C4 zone. However, those are part of the what I'll call the graduated density concept in the zoning. And I'll get into that a little bit more in the course of my testimony. And then we're also seeking relief for parking spaces on site, as well as several site design standards, which were previously mentioned. So in terms of the FAR and height variances, the standard of review really comes from the Randolph Town Center, New Jersey Supreme Court case. And so the focus for the board is whether the deviations that are proposed here can be accommodated on site, and that the site remains suitable for the despite the proposed deviations, in this case being a greater height and floor area ratio than are permitted by ordinance. So in terms of the floor area ratio, as Mr. Kelso articulated at the outset, this is really a unique case because the graduated density provisions of the ordinance essentially tie us to standards for a minimum 5,000 square foot lot, even though this lot is very close to being 10,000 square feet in size. So the implication is that we do need variance relief from the FAR standard, which is 4.0, again, intended for a 5,000 square foot lot, whereas we're proposing an FAR of 4.8. However, the slightly deficient lot area here, just 21 square feet, really has no bearing on the ability of this property to accommodate a building of this proposed floor area. It's actually less than what will be permitted for just a slightly larger lot, right? 5.0 being permitted for a 10,000 square foot lot. We're at 4.8. So we're really very much consistent with the total floor area that's tied to the size of a lot within the C4 zone. I would say, as a further point, the building's max is also further reduced by the provision of a 7-foot setback from Barrett Street at the base of the 5th story. And the 5th story is significant because this is where the height begins to exceed what would typically be permitted for a 5,000 square foot category. So this is a mitigating factor in terms of the design of the building as to how this building can be accommodated on this property despite the deviations from both the FAR and the height provisions of the C4 ordinance. Relief is being requested to permit the 67-foot building height to the roof deck, whereas 40 feet is permitted for a 5,000 square foot building and 60 feet is permitted for a 10,000 square foot lot, excuse me. And the applicant has also provided a sky plane setback of 10 degrees, starting roughly 40 to 45 feet as required for even taller buildings in this zone, but actually not required here. So in terms of the justification for the deviation on building height, it's also worth noting, and I know Ms. Bajaj described this in her testimony, that part of what's driving the taller building here is in fact accommodating the higher first floor ceilings to accommodate off-street parking and loading, as well as commercial uses, and also really high quality 9-foot ceilings within the residential units themselves. And I would just further note that as Ms. Bajaj described, the rooftop appurtenances and amenity spaces will not be visible from the Barrett Street sidewalk due to their setback from the parapet and roof line, again, which further minimize the impact of the building height. So in my opinion, this property can accommodate the proposed building height and density without creating any substantial detrimental impacts to the public good, nor impairment of the zone plan. And just to summarize, again, this is a zone, the C4 downtown, which is a very walkable, higher density neighborhood that's characterized by buildings of a similar scale and size or even larger. And this is a permitted use in a building with a number of massing and design features, such as the step back, the sky plane, as well as the terraces at the fourth and roof levels, which do help to mitigate any impact concerns arising from these deviations. So it's my opinion that the applicant would satisfy both the positive and the negative criteria for the 2 D variances that are being sought this evening. As it relates to the bulk variances and waivers, I'll start by addressing the off-street parking deficiency. And you just heard from Mr. Valeri, at least from his perspective, as to the adequacy of the parking supply that's provided here. But also just to reiterate what you heard from Mr. Dominguez, this is a parking standard that comes from the RSIS statewide requirements, which I know the board is very familiar with. Just to describe that a little bit, the high-rise parking ratios require 0.8 spaces for each studio and 1-bedroom unit and 1.3 spaces for each 2-bedroom unit. And then we also have a slight requirement for the office space. So the total requirement is 45 spaces. But as you heard, there is an arrangement with the parking authority to provide those spaces within walking distance of the property, the wellness deck, and also the agreement to, or the requirement to pay and satisfy the pilot fee for the 29 space deviation. So with that as a little background, I would also note that the RSIS does provide flexibility to grant relief from its requirements based on local conditions. And this is a downtown location within walking distance of various transit options. And based on the unit sizes here, which are majority of studio and 1-bedroom units, it's really unlikely that this is a property or a facility that's going to generate more than 1 car per unit, certainly. In addition, there are 32 bike parking stalls that are being provided within the building itself. And of course, the benefits of providing downtown living in a transit-rich area, as well as the off-site spaces and alternative transportation options, certainly outweigh any potential detriments of not providing the full required parking within the building itself on site. As you heard from Mr. Modesto, the curb cut relief that we're seeking is for the existing condition of the existing driveway extending out to Kirkpatrick. So that's essentially not changing. And it does provide a better traffic safety alternative in terms of egress than trying to do both ingress and egress both from Barrett Street. The parking setback that's requested here, I think this is very much a technical requirement because this is intended for setting back parking areas that are surface or open parking lots from adjacent properties, in my opinion. Here we have a parking facility that's completely enclosed by the building. So despite the fact that the setback, strictly speaking, to this parking space is less than 3 feet, it's actually a much better solution than having exposed parking at a 3-foot setback from an adjacent property. And then finally, just as it relates to the landscaping, this is another technical requirement. As Mr. Kelso pointed out, the C4 zone is, from a planning perspective, like a 0 setback zone, which means that it's intended to promote buildings that are attached to one another. There's no setbacks required to the rear or the side or the front. So providing a landscape buffer is really not necessary and somewhat incompatible with the C4 zone requirements. So we would respectfully request relief from that provision of the ordinance as well. So just in summary, the applicant is seeking D variances related to the physical form of the property, not its use, and the criteria for the D6 and D4 height variances are satisfied, and that the property can accommodate the proposed height without causing substantial detriments or impairment of the zone plan. And the FAR is really on target with the city's ordinance in terms of the size of the property itself. The parking variance is appropriate for this downtown location and subject to the aforementioned agreement with the city, both in terms of the PILOP and the parking authority arrangement. And the remaining relief here, to the extent it's applicable, is really both technical and very minor in nature within the context of the overall project. So taken together, the relief being requested here advances purposes E and G of the municipal land use law, because this project is appropriate for this location in terms of its residential use and density in a walkable, transit-oriented location. And it also furthers the general welfare in reference to purpose A, because the overall concept is consistent with the use and form of development envisioned by the master plan and also allowed by the zoning ordinance. There's no substantial detriments to the public good or any substantial impairment of the zone plan. So in my opinion, to the extent the board is inclined to look favorably upon this application, I believe the applicant has satisfied, and the board can certainly make a finding that the positive and the negative criteria for all the requested variances and waivers have been addressed. So with that, Mr. Kelso, that would conclude my direct testimony, unless you have anything further.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. I have no further questions, and that does complete our presentation.
All right, I'll ask any board member or board professional if they have any questions for this witness at this time. Seeing none. Dan, would you like to open it up to the public?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Cox. If there are any members of the public who would wish to speak on this application, please announce yourselves and I'll put you on a list and you'll get up to 5 minutes to speak on this application. If you need to unmute yourself, *6 if you're on the telephone, and a little microphone button if you're on computer. So I will begin taking names now. If there's anyone who wishes to speak on this application, please announce yourself. Anyone at all? Last call. Chairman Cox, seeing
Hello,
none.
do you hear me? This is
Oh.
Albert Sultana. Do you hear me?
Albert
Sultana.
Sultana. Yes.
Yes, I am the neighbor there.
Hold on 1 second,
Okay.
Mr. Sultana.
Sure.
Okay.
We're just going to make sure that there's no one else that wants to
Yep.
that wants to speak, and then we'll call you when it's time.
Sure.
Is there anyone else? Chairman Cox, seeing none. Mr. Sultana is the only speaker on this application.
Okay. Mr. Sultana, can you please state your name and your address for the record?
Yes, this is Albert Sultana from 1 Reza Benjamin Way, Freehold, New Jersey.
Mr. Sultana, do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
You have 5 minutes.
Yes, I'll be short. I am the neighbor at 93 Bayard Street. And from what I see, this would be a very commendable building. Very, very nice, will be improve the area. And I think I am very much in favor of it.
Okay, thank you. Is that all you have, Mr. Sultana?
Yes, that's all I have to say. I just
Okay,
want
Mr.
to
Sultana.
know that I approve of it.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you.
All right, seeing that there was no other speakers or people from the public, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. Mr. Kelso, do you want to do a wrap up or are you good?
I submit to the board.
Okay, thank you. Board, do we have any discussion on this before we put it to a vote?
This is Matt Ferguson. Just real quick, I think the vertical development, the green roof, I think these are positive for the city, and I think I support that. We have a constant concern of parking in New Brunswick, but the applicant has made an agreement with MBPA, so I think that's good. So I just want to trust that they will do that, and I appreciate that. But I'm supporting this, and I think it's a good move.
Thank you, Matt. Any other members? Or any board professionals have anything? before we put it to vote, Katie, can you please read the conditions if we find favorable on this application?
Yes, good evening. This is Katie Pinello, Principal Planner for the City of New Brunswick. Should the board act favorably on this application, we recommend the following conditions of approval. Compliance with the terms of the city engineering report dated October 21st, 2021 for the project. Payment of a site performance bond to the New Brunswick Department of Engineering if required. Submission of a site inspection escrow deposit for engineering inspection fees in an amount to be determined by the city engineer. If required, payment of all water and sewer connection fees to the New Brunswick Water Utility pursuant to Titles 1304 and 1308. Issuance of a road opening permit from the city engineer if required. The applicant shall schedule a pre-construction meeting with the city engineering department. Compliance with the terms of the Vignell Consulting Group report dated October 21st, 2021. Planning review escrow funded for all anticipated post-approval reviews, payment of any other fees due to the city of New Brunswick related to the development and use of this project, payment of any outstanding taxes due and water sewer fees to the city of New Brunswick, Middlesex County Planning Board approval or waiver, Freehold Soil Conservation District approval or waiver, submittal of approval or waiver from any additional agencies as required. Submission of engineering and or architectural plans to comply with any changes required by the planning or engineering memos or plan amendments offered or required at the time of the hearing, execution of a Title 39 enforcement agreement, compliance with the city's water service system ordinance, trash and recycling pickup to be provided by a private hauler at no expense to the city. Trash pickup shall occur at least twice per week with additional pickup as necessary. The applicant shall pay any payment in lieu of parking fees as determined by the city. All utilities and other site improvements to be maintained by the applicant at their sole expense. All utilities to be constructed underground. All temporary encroachments into the public right-of-way shall require city council approval. All construction staging shall be done on site unless an encroachment for same into the public right-of-way shall be approved by city council. Streets shall be kept clean of sediment and debris. The applicant shall cause the streets to be cleaned if directed to do so by the Director of Public Works. Shall cause the streets to be cleaned as so directed. Tracking pads shall be installed at all construction exits. Replacement of damaged streets, curbs, and sidewalks per the direction of the city engineer. And the applicant is seeking preliminary and final site plan approval with a D6 building height variance, a D4 floor area ratio variance, bulk variances for parking and landscaping adjacent to properties, design waivers for lot lighting uniformity, foot candle lighting at the property line, intersection of property lines, Kirkpatrick Street for the curb cut, and a parking setback along both side yards. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Katie. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, this is John Zimmerman. I'll make a motion to approve.
Matt Ferguson, motion to approve, second.
Yahaira Torres,
Yes.
John Zimmerman,
Yes.
Mike Tublin,
Yes.
Carla Castaneda, Carla Castaneda. Are you there, Carla? You think you're muted? Oh,
Yes.
yeah, you're muted. Oh, thank you.
I-
Michael Belvin.
Sorry about
It's okay. It happens. Michael Belvin, you're muted. Michael
Yes.
Belvin. Oh, there. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Matt Ferguson,
Yes.
John Cox.
Yes.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Congratulations. Yes.
This is
Arvin.
our, the board also has a copy of resolution, which
Yep.
if they had favorably approved this application, they could adopt at this time by way of a motion, a second, and a vote. That resolution has been provided to all board members. And I have confirmed that those conditions have made their way into the resolution as well.
Okay. Arvin, do we need it to read it on into the record or just by a motion
No.
since we've all received it?
Right. You've all received it. It will be a matter of public record. It'll be posted.
Okay.
Okay, just to jump in, but there were a couple of conditions that were added here tonight, at least one trash related.
I've added that to my copy. That's correct.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Arvin. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution for 8991 Bayard Street or 89 Bayard Street LLC?
Matt Ferguson to approve the motion.
Or no, are you
Second.
motioning, Matt? Because we didn't have a motion yet.
Yeah, Matt said
I
he's
was
going to make a
motioning
motion.
to approve. Yeah.
Okay, just clarify.
Michael Tublin seconds.
You hire Torres,
Yes.
John Zimmerman,
Yes.
Michael Tublin,
Yes.
Carla Castaneda,
Yes.
Michael Balvin,
Yes.
Matt Ferguson,
Yes.
John Cox.
Yes.
Thank you very much, members of the board, for your consideration and patience.
Thank you, Mr. Kelso. All right, well, we'll move on to the next application. The next application is going to be Sanford Property LLC, 208-210 Sanford Street, Block 239, lots 1.01 and 3.02, ZB-2021-08. Primary and final site plan application with D&C variances to demolish the industrial structure on the site in order to construct a new 3-story, 16-unit residential building with 14 parking spaces. Zoning district R-5A, single and two-family residential. James F. Clarking III, Esquire. Board Attorney Arvin Ital. Has the proper notice been given, and does this board have jurisdiction?
I have reviewed the notice and the publication. This board does have jurisdiction to hear this application this evening.
Thank you. And then I will go right to the board members. Is there any board member that has a conflict of interest with this application? Please state your name and what the possible conflict may be.
Mr. Chairman, I have had an opportunity to speak with the board members. This is Arvin Ital. I believe that Mr. Ferguson will be recusing himself from both remaining applications.
That is correct, Mr. Ital. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, to that end, if I may interject, I just want to make sure that Ms. McNair is still on the line, because otherwise we don't have 7 for the next 2 applications. Charlotte McNair, are you still on the line?
She's there. She's just muted.
Okay.
I do see her still on.
Okay, that's good. All right, so we have 7. I figured that the applicant would want to know that before we proceed.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so, okay, Mr. Clarkin, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman Cox, board members, professional staff, Attorney James Clarkin of the firm of Clarkin and Vignolo for the applicant. Property is located at the intersection of Sanford Street and Lee Avenue. The chairman, in his introduction, took a good part of the first paragraph of my opening statement. What I can tell you is that the property is an oversized lot with 10,000 square feet of lot area. It is improved, and I use that term very loosely because the condition of the 3 industrial structures is an absolute eyesore. It has not been utilized in years and is grossly deteriorated. A use variance is needed, but the multifamily use is consistent with the residential character of this neighborhood. Mr. Bill Nell's report actually fortifies my statement that the area is largely multifamily and 2-family uses. Each of these 16 proposed residential uses, units will be a 2-bedroom. Applicant went to the Technical Advisory Committee on 2 occasions, took in the staff input, and made a number of revisions to the plan. Applicant then went a little further and on its own initiative made some further revisions of its own. In particular, the applicant has pulled the building toward the intersection. And the reason for that was to provide additional setbacks to the side and rear yard lines where we have adjoining single-family residential uses. Although we have minimal front yard setbacks, there's existing concrete sidewalks along both frontages. They're quite deep at about 12 feet. This will provide what I call a visual setback. The setback and coverage variances are needed because the standards in the R5A zone were developed for single and two-family use and not the multifamily structure that the applicant is proposing. We think that the 14 parking spaces out of a required 32 is a fairly good ratio and in fact is consistent, if not better, than some of the other projects that this board has approved in the past 5 to 10 years. Obviously, a floor area ratio variance is also required. One of the features of the site plan are 2 electric car charging stations. So we will be in compliance with the new state statute. We also have a bicycle area for 9 bikes indoors to help us reduce reliance on the automobile. Property is also on a New Jersey Transit bus line. As for landscaping, we're going to provide street trees, and we are proposing 2 landscape planters within the sidewalk areas. The landscape planter concept is one that was approved last year by the planning board in a similar 11-unit application at the corner of Remsen Avenue and Redmond Street. The planters in this case will also require approval from the city council because they are located in the right of way. And we would make that same request to the council if we're fortunate enough to receive your approval this evening. We have 2 witnesses tonight. The first one is Ron Sadowski, our engineer, and the second is Angelo Valtudo, who is our planner. We also have available on call our architect, Larry Johnson, who prepared the elevations and floor plans in the event we have questions that only he can answer. Mr. Chairman, unless you or any of the board members have any initial questions, I'll move to the first witness.
Does any member of the board have any questions before we get started? Or professional staff? Seeing none, call your first witness, Mr. Clark.
Yes, we'll call Ronald Sadowski.
Hold on. Where's the...
Good evening.
Mr. Sadowski, can you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Ronald J. Sadowski, S-A-D-O-W-S-K-I.
Mr. Sadowski, you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Floor is yours.
Mr. Sadowski, you've been before this board before, haven't you?
I have, yes.
Yes. Have your credentials in any way changed since the last time you?
No, they have not.
Okay, then we will accept you as a expert witness.
Thank you.
Mr. Cox.
Thank you.
Ron, did you prepare the site plan drawings which accompanied this application?
Yes, I did.
Tell the board what is the location and the size of the property for the record.
The location of the property is at the intersection of Sanford Street and Lee Avenue. There's 2 separate lots with a total of 10,000 square feet.
What are the surrounding land uses in this area?
Predominantly multifamily and two-family residential.
What's on the property today?
There are 2 industrial buildings and a garage structure on lot 1.01, which is closest to Sanford Street, and the second lot, lot 3.01, is vacant.
What does the applicant propose here?
We are going to demolish the existing structures and construct a 3-story building with parking on the first floor or first level and 16 2-bedroom apartment units on the second and third levels. That's 8 units on each floor. I'm sorry?
There'll be no basement, correct?
That is correct.
What site improvements are proposed?
Right now, we are proposing building setbacks of 0.5 feet along Lee and Sanford and 11.5 feet on the side and rear yards. We're proposing a 2-way access on Lee Avenue with ADA crosswalk striping. It'll be ADA compliant. 14 interior parking spaces, one of which will be an ADA parking space and accessible. There will be 2 electric vehicle charging stations in the parking garage or the parking level. We are proposing a bicycle rack that can service 9 bicycles, along with
Be
some
indoors, Ron?
interior lighting and wall-mounted lighting along the exterior of the building. We are proposing shade trees or street trees along Sanford Street and Lee Avenue, and along with the landscape planter, one on Lee and one on Sanford. We're landscaping the side yard and the rear yard. We are proposing a stormwater management system adjacent to Lee Avenue, which the city engineer has reviewed and had no issues within his report. A sanitary lateral, a new lateral connecting to the existing sanitary system within Sanford Street. We're proposing a domestic water supply for both fire and domestic, I should say, separate lines. A trash and recycling building or space within the building itself, which we will then, on trash and recycling days, the dumpsters will be rolled out off the depressed curb that exists and then disposed of. So the dumpsters will be brought in and out. They will not be visible from outside the building. We also have indoor meter rooms for electric and water.
All right, let's go back to the bicycle storage area. That's indoors, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And with respect to the lighting, will the lighting levels comply with the ordinance requirements?
Yes.
Can you tell the board what are the dimensions of the planter beds?
The planter beds are 4.5 feet wide by, okay, they're 2 separate beds, one on Lee Avenue, 4.5 feet wide by 12 feet in length. And the planter bed on Sanford Street is also 4.5 feet wide and 20 feet in length.
And the sidewalk areas there have a depth of approximately how many feet?
Approximately 12 feet, so they'll be remaining approximately 7.5 feet in width of sidewalk.
Okay. And we do have an indoor meter room, correct?
That is correct.
To the extent that one of our sets of plans showed outdoor meters, that's incorrect and will be corrected.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. And we will terminate the existing lines for sanitary waste in the water supply?
Yes.
Okay. Have you had an opportunity to review the Big Nell Planning Report, which is dated January 18 of this year?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, between Mr. Sadowski and I will take you through the plan review comments, which is paragraph 9 and begins at the bottom of page 4. Items A and C go to planning proofs, and our planner will handle those. Item B requests, as it always does, that we obtain all other necessary governmental approvals, and of course, we will do that. Item D suggests increasing the side and rear setback, and by pulling the building forward, as Mr. Sadowski just testified to, we have increased those setbacks. Item E concerns the outdoor meters, and we will correct the plans that were inaccurate. With regard to items F, G, H, and I, those are all for the planner to testify about. Ron, item I requests a lighting plan for the parking area. Can we comply with that request?
I believe that's item J, and yes, we will provide
Yes,
the
you're right, it is
required
item
lighting
J,
plan.
and we can comply.
Yes.
All right. With regard to trash and recycling, you've covered that in your testimony, and
Yes.
the frequency will be twice per week unless more is required?
That is correct.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, board members, I'm going to handle item L. You have, as part of the submission, architectural elevations and floor plans from Mr. Johnson. And the cover sheet A1 shows the facades along both street frontages. And from that, you can tell that the building material for those two frontages is brick, that there is a mid-level banding, that there is a parapet at the roof with decorative cornice. You'll also notice two awnings and decorative headers over the windows. The facades of the other two sides are hardy board. And once again, if there's any further questions, we can call Mr. Johnson later on. With regard to item M, tree removal and replacement calculations, Ron, can we accommodate that request?
Yes, there are no trees on the site, and we will add a note to the revised drawings as such.
Can you handle item N?
And yes, there are no transformers proposed on the property, and all utilities will be installed underground.
Item O will be handled by the planner. And Ron, can you clarify item P for us, please?
Yes, item P, the correct FAR is 2.32 as noted in the Big Nell report.
Have you also had an opportunity to review the Department of Engineering memorandum, which is dated December 13, 2021?
I have.
And can you address it?
Yes, a lot of it dovetails with the Big Nell planning report. Mr. Burks makes a series of recommendations on page 4 and 5 of his report. We will comply with each. There are items like lot consolidation, a logistics plan, bonding, and as-built drawings.
All right. Are there any items in that report the applicant cannot comply with?
No.
Mr. Chairman, we also received at the TAC meeting on October 20 a list of requests from the construction official, and I can state for the record that the applicant will agree to comply with all of those items. Also, I would like to point out that if the applicant is fortunate enough to receive your approval, that the voluntary condition would be payment of the payment in lieu of parking fee. That concludes Mr. Sadowski's direct testimony. He's available to you for your questions.
Thank you. Is there any member of the board or professional staff that have any questions for Mr. Sadowski?
Chairman Cox, this is Dan Dominguez, not for Mr. Sadowski, but for Mr. Clarkin, if that's all right.
Yes, please go ahead, Dan.
Yes.
Just since it came up in the last application and you brought it up again, and you brought it up with regard to this application, Mr. Clarkin, any issue on a condition of frequency of trash collection?
No, I had indicated in my kind of leading question to Mr. Sadowski that it would be a minimum of 2 and more if it was warranted. And
right.
As a condition.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
One other clarification, if I could. My client has indicated that although there's a meter room, the gas meters will remain outside.
Okay. Mr. Clarkin, I'm not sure if that area has permit parking, but if they do, or if it comes up later in the later on that they do make that residential permit parking, would your client be willing to give up the right to have permits for that area?
The answer is I didn't address it, Chairman Cox, because it was not indicated in any report. But yes, my client will voluntarily agree to waive rights to those parking permits.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Clarkin. Any other member of the board or professional staff have any questions?
Mr. Chair, Dan Burke, the city engineer, I have basically a statement to make or a suggestion, if you will.
Yes, please, Mr. Burke, go ahead.
Just as a point of notification to the applicant and his professionals. The city is currently planning a significant improvement along Sanford Street. It includes the replacement of the existing potable water line and then followed by a roadway improvement. It's projected that this work may begin as early as the summer. I would strongly urge the applicant and its professionals to maintain coordination with the water department and the engineering department to ensure the services that you need to cross or connect to facilities within Sanford Street are completed in coordination with that improvement, so as not to have to seek excavation in a freshly paved road. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Burke.
Thank you. That's extremely helpful, and we'll certainly make sure we do the appropriate coordination.
Dan and or Katie or Arvin, would that have to be put in as part of the resolution?
No, that's a condition that would be in the staff report.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
And so we're clear, Mr. Burke, is that in your staff report?
It is not. I don't believe we had the level of clarity as to when that improvement would take place. At the time those staff reports were generated, I know we're under design, both water and the roadway improvement at this time. And, you know, so it's not included in my report.
Arvin, would it be prudent to put a condition that basically says that the applicant will work with the city engineering department to coordinate digging, utility access, et cetera, to minimize any possibility of cutting into fresh road or something to that effect?
Well, there's a pre-construction meeting condition that's normally part of the resolutions. So they'd have to coordinate with the city engineer regardless. Dan, would you be satisfied with that, Mr. Burke?
Yes, I am, because I'll be controlling that pre-construction meeting. Comes to my office, as well as controlling the release for construction of the project should the board approve this application. I just want to make the professionals known and the applicant known that it's pending, and coordination. They should keep in touch with my office and the water department, and we will do it vice versa to the benefit of both parties.
And we'll reiterate our cooperation, and we really appreciate the heads up.
Mr. Clark, did your client have any idea approximately as to when he would like to start the construction of this, if it was approved?
Approximately 3 months.
Okay, all right. Because I did hear Mr. Burke, I believe he said that the other stuff was going to go on possibly during the summer. So just want to make sure that we're all in the same time frame.
Yeah,
Yep.
we'll be in a good position time-wise to do the coordination.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else have any questions or comments? No. Mr. Clark, your next witness, please.
We'll call Angelo Valtudo.
Mr. Valtudo, can you please state your name and spell your last name?
Yes, sir. Angelo J. Valatudo, Valetutto.
Mr. Valtudo, do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir, I do.
Mr.
Floor is yours.
Mr. Valtudo, you have appeared before this board on other occasions, haven't you?
Yes, sir, I have.
All right, and have your credentials changed in any way?
Just a little bit more experience, maybe a little more gray hair.
I think we're all there. All right, thank you. I will accept you as an expert witness.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Valtudo, have you reviewed the application, the engineering and architectural plans, and the staff reports in connection with this project?
Yes, sir, I have.
And have you visited the site and toured the immediate neighborhood?
Yes, I did.
Are you familiar with this city's zoning ordinance and its master plan?
Yes, sir, I am.
All right. What zone is this property located in?
It is in the R5A zone, which is a residential zone.
What type of residential uses does that zone permit?
It permits single and two-family residential uses.
So a use variance is needed in connection with this application, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct. However, I'd like to start out front by that the multifamily use that's being proposed will be consistent with many of the other uses in the neighborhood. As you alluded to earlier in Mr. Bignell's report, he specifically says that the land use inventory in each direction surrounding the property is multifamily housing and also has a number of two-family residential uses. And I also found a number of schools and houses of worship.
What is the size of the subject property?
It's 100 by 100, 10,000 square feet.
Frontage is on 2 streets?
It is both Sanford and Lee Avenue with the access proposed into our parking lot coming in off of Lee Avenue.
Are parking on the first level?
Yes, sir, on ground level.
Yes. What is on the property today?
As Mr. Sadowski and you've also indicated, there are 3 industrial type garage buildings that are vacant, deteriorated, and I think you were being kind by saying it was a eyesore. It was probably a huge eyesore.
Can you take the board through the variances that are needed for this project?
Yes, sir. And again, confirming pretty much what was in Mr. Bignell's report, the use variance, which we already noted, a floor area ratio variance, setback coverage variances, the parking variance in terms of number, and also with regard to parking for setback, 3 feet versus 9 feet, and then a minimal height variance.
Mr. Veltuda, that's a lot of variances, isn't it?
Yes, sir, it is, but the board, I'm sure, is keeping in mind the fact that the zone standards for the R5A zone were developed for the permitted uses of a single and a two-family and not what we're proposing as a multifamily project. This is one of the situations where I believe that all of the bulk variances will be subsumed within the use variance, should the board proceed with approving the subject application.
All right, let's return to the use variance. Can you justify this board granting it?
Yes, sir. To test as to whether or not the property is particularly suitable for the proposed use, and I think it is for several reasons. The reasons, when taken together, in my opinion, satisfy the proof requirement here. First reason the property is particularly suitable because it is substantially oversized for the R5A zone. Second, the property is along an NJ Transit bus route. Third, the location of the property is near a number of other multifamily residential uses. Fourth, the 14 on-site parking spaces can be created, which, while a variance, is a good ratio with the number of units, which is 16. The ratio is actually better, as you indicated earlier, and has been my observation with some of the other projects that this board has approved and which, in my opinion, has found to function well within the neighborhood. Fifth, the project has been designed to create generous side and rear yard setbacks of 11.5 feet, which is pretty good for an urban environment. And last, this is a private redevelopment of a property which would not cost the city anything to implement.
Do you see any goals and objectives of the city's master plan and the municipal land use law that would be furthered by granting this use variance?
Yes, sir. In my opinion, first I would offer purpose letter A to guide the appropriate use of land, and that will promote public health, safety, and general welfare. We will be eliminating a deteriorated series of buildings that are a safety hazard and replacing them with new residential housing units that will promote the general welfare. Let's not ever forget that the state of an ongoing shortage of safe, affordable housing, which we offer this application, will provide. The estimated rentals for the 2-bedroom units will vary between $1,750 to $1,900 per month. Purpose letter I, to promote a desirable visual environment. We're trading what we said earlier as a huge eyesore for what we classified a beautiful building, which pretty much takes into account the colored rendering on the first page of our architect, Mr. Johnson's plans. And finally, we would be promoting purpose N because the proposal will lead to a more efficient use of the land.
Have you formulated an opinion with respect to one of the negative prongs, and that being whether the variance can be granted, this use variance, can it be granted without substantial detriment to the public good in New Brunswick?
Yes, sir. In my opinion, is that there will be some detriment because of the reduced setbacks, but these detriments do not rise to the level of being, in my opinion, substantial. By pulling the building forward to the intersection, the applicant has increased the side and rear yard setback to up against our adjoining residential uses. And in my observation, both residential uses are as far away from our property line that they can be, meaning there is far away than,
Their
as opposed
setbacks
to
on their lot.
yes, sir. This project is also in, will provide for adequate air, light, and open space. There's an abundant parking supply for a project such as this in an urban environment. Plus, we have the bicycle storage, which was a result of dealing with the TAC. There's the Uber and Lyft. We have, excuse me, the bus route right along Sanford Street, with the nearest bus stop being a block away on the corner of Sanford and Remsen. So I don't see any particular parking issues on this application.
Do you see any impairment to this city zone plan or its zoning ordinance if the use variance were granted?
No, in my opinion, I do not. This multifamily residential use will be quite consistent with the established land development pattern in the area. It is a quantum improvement over the decidedly non-conforming industrial use that was on the property.
As with any use variance, we have an obligation to perform what's called a reconciliation, correct?
Yes, sir, it's correct.
Can you reconcile granting this use variance with the fact that the R5A zone does not permit a multifamily use?
Yes, I believe I can. The city has had a extremely forward-reaching policy of allowing greater density and higher floor area ratios than the ordinary ordinance provides. This policy has become a tool to create new, safe housing stock for the city. The New Jersey Supreme Court Medici case gives examples of how an applicant can accomplish the reconciliation. One of the examples is that we can point to a changing characteristic of a community. In New Brunswick, we can point to a pattern of approving and building much higher density and floor area ratios that has been ongoing for more than a dozen years at least. And the ever increasing density within the city is a changing characteristic. And again, in my professional opinion, both for the applications I covered and just enjoying the sites and restaurants in the theater district within the city has worked well.
Have you had an opportunity to review Mr. Bignell's report dated January 18 of this year?
Yes, sir, I have. The plan review comments in paragraph 9 focus on the number of proposed units, and the variances that are needed. In my opinion, I have provided what I believe to be more than adequate justification to grant the variances and to justify the number of units being proposed. There is one subsection, that being letter O, which requests planning testimony to reconcile the proposed building because the intent of the R5A zone is to provide the expansion and preservation of single-family and two-family uses. My response is that not every R5A lot lends itself to single and two-family development. You really don't have this along the stretch of Stanford Street, as we've indicated, and also in Mr. Bignell's report, there are a number of multifamily uses as well as other uses in terms of schools and houses of worship. I think the reason for that is that Stanford Street is such a busy roadway. If this was an application for what I call mid-block, then I would agree and would be tough to reconcile the proposed building, but we are not mid-block. We are at a busy intersection and believe would fit in well for the reasons we've testified throughout the hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Valtudo. Mr. Chairman, that concludes his direct testimony. He's available for any of your questions.
Thank you. Any member of the board or board professionals have any questions for this witness? Seeing none, your next witness, Mr. Clarkin?
Chairman, that concludes our direct case. I just simply reserve the opportunity to speak to the board depending upon what type of public comment there may be.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Cox, this is Todd Fletcher from Big Nell Planning.
Yes, Todd. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was muted there for a second.
No problem.
All right. So I wanted to wait till after Mr. Valtudo and all of the other witnesses had put their testimony on to just weigh in on a few quick little items that I think the board is going to want to consider. First of all, I just want to weigh in and say that frankly the conditions on the site are so bad that I think from a planning perspective, a development like this, even if it is multifamily residential, it's going to be a positive for the site. I think the planning question for the board is really going to be the question of capacity. And I think this is something for the sort of like the key issue here for the board's consideration is, does this site have the capacity for the number of units and the intensity of units proposed? If you're satisfied through the testimony that's provided by the Mr. Sadlowski and Mr. Valtudo, when it comes to deliberation, you can deliberate on it. And if you're in favor of it and you support that, you can certainly grant the variance. If you're not satisfied that the site has enough capacity for what's being proposed here, you can certainly probe that issue with the applicant. But I really think it comes down to the capacity question. Is this site, does it have enough for space and enough capacity for the number of units and the intensity and the parking of what's being proposed? That being said, I just had some just quick little responses to some of the comments. In terms of the facade of the building, I was hoping for some more testimony on exactly what the facade would look like. We really want to get the facade of this building to be an attractive, good-looking building. I think it needs a little bit of work. We're certainly willing to work with the applicant's architect if he acts favorably, to work with them to improve the facade. We'd like to get some improvements on that. Things like putting meters. We have a meter room. We need to get all the meters, gas meters, electric meters, in the meter room. We don't want them on the outside facade of the building. So we'd like to get that revision. And then just to get the building to be a nice, attractive building. So it's something, visually it's an improvement for the area and for the city. So that's all I have.
Can I speak? Am I muted?
No, hold on one second, Mr. Johnson. If you're going to speak, we'll have to swear you in as a witness. Mr. Clarkin, is that what you would like for us to do?
I would, well, let Mr. Johnson have some clarification. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Johnson, can you please state your name, spell your last name for the record?
Yes, Larry Johnson. I trade as Larry Johnson Architect. My last name is Johnsson.
Mr. Johnson, do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Floor is yours.
And Mr. Johnson, I know you've appeared before this board and all. Have your credentials changed at all since the last time you appeared before this board?
No, they have not.
All right, we'll accept you as an expert in architecture.
Okay, I just want to speak about the gas meters. On several of the other projects that I've represented here at the City of New Brunswick, Public Service has had us put the meters on the outside after we have designed at least 3 or 4 projects with gas meter rooms. And we get to the construction site and the coordination with Public Service and French Street, Seaman Street, all of the buildings that we've done recently, including the one we're doing on French Street. Public Service has required us to put the gas meters on the outside of the building. That's where that came from, and in this iteration of the design of this location.
Mr. Chairman, if we cannot get Public Services approval to put them inside, then we'd be happy to work with the staff to see if there's some way we can buffer them from view.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, Chairman Cox, I was going to just throw out there that, yeah, we could look into ways that we can screen them with evergreens as we use for a lot of other screening techniques, if it comes to that.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you.
I'll respond to Todd's comments after we hear from the public, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. At this point in time, I'd like to open it up to the public. Dan, can you please make a list for speakers who would
Yes.
like to speak on this application?
Thank you, Chairman Cox. If there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this application, please state your name, and we'll put you on a list of speakers, and you'll have 5 minutes to comment on this application. If you are muted, if you're on telephone, to unmute, *6. If you are on the computer, a little microphone button to unmute. So again, if there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this application, please announce yourself and we'll put you on the list of speakers.
Yes, Sharon Sutton, priest in charge at St. Albans Church, Lee Avenue, and Delavan Street.
Sharon Sutton, thank you. Anyone else? Last call. Seeing none. Chairman Cox, we have one speaker for this application, Ms. Sharon Sutton.
Ms. Sharon Sutton, go ahead, Dan. Go ahead.
Ms. Sharon Sutton, can you please state your name, spell your last name for the record?
Yes, Sharon Sutton, Sutton. My title is Reverend.
All right, thank you, Ms. Sutton. Do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Ms. Sutton, you have 5 minutes.
Okay, I have a few questions. Will the residents of the neighborhood be notified when construction is about to start?
The answer
will
if you want to handle them one at a time, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please, go ahead, Mr. Clark. And do you have an answer for that?
I have an answer for that because the city has an ordinance that would require that we send notice to everybody within 200 feet when we're about ready to perform the demolition, and the construction, Reverend, would start immediately after the demolition. So yes, you would get notice.
Okay, thank you. My second question is regarding parking. Did I hear a comment about permits?
Well, Mr. Sutton, there's a lot of feedback. If anyone who is not speaking, if you can mute your phone so that we don't get so much feedback, I'd appreciate it. Yes, Mr. Sutton, I as the chairman, I always ask the question that if there's residential parking in the area, that these type of construction give up the right to have permit parking on the street. And I also ask if in the future, if residential parking was put in by the city of New Brunswick or the parking authority, that they give up the future rights to have those permits too.
Okay, because the neighborhood is already congested. We have the funeral home, we have the schools, we have the church, we have the food pantry on Wednesday night.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything else, Ms. Sutton?
No, that's it.
All right, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. We appreciate your comments.
I'm sorry, may I speak? My speaker wasn't working and I had to call in.
Dan, can we?
It's up to Arvind.
Arvin?
We haven't closed the public portion, so we can certainly entertain another.
Okay. Yes, sure.
Sure.
Ma'am, can you please state your name? Sorry,
My
Deb.
name is Yana Hernandez. I'm a resident of 201 Power Street, which sits on the corner of Power and Lee.
Okay. Ms. Hernandez, can you please spell your last name for the record?
Yes, Hernandez.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Your 5 minutes begin now.
I want the record to state the section of Power Street from Lee to Renson Avenue is residential permit parking. And as it is, we already get the overflow of the two-family homes on Sanford Street, as well as, like the Reverend said, Anderson Funeral Home. When the temple has services, it's congested. And we're the type of residential area that isn't cleared out during the day because we do have school parking that's generated from Livingston School, Redshaw School, and the daycare center that is housed at the temple. It is ironic. I know there are a lot of two-family homes, but the properties that face this property and are adjacent to it on each side are single-family homes. And as it is, I resent that there are only going to be 14 spots when you're putting in 16 units. To me, that's going to generate 32 cars in an already congested area. And as an employee of the New Brunswick schools, has anybody studied the impact, because these probably will be families, on our already overcrowded schools?
Thank you. Do you have any other questions or comments, Mrs. Hernandez?
I do have a question. The garbage, is this a private pickup or will this be Public Works pickup?
Private pickup.
Public pickup?
Private.
Private. Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome. Do you have any other comments?
No, but I think that the board should really take into consideration the parking area in an area that is already overflowing.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Dominguez, there is no more
No.
callers, correct? I will close the public portion of the meeting at this time. Mr. Clarkin, would you like to give a summary?
I would, thank you. With regard to Todd's comment about improving the facade, we will certainly agree, if we're fortunate to get your approval, to work with him to make additional improvements to the facade. With regard to the overcrowding of schools, I know that your board attorney can tell you that that is not a matter that a board is able to consider in an application of this type. With regard to the parking, our experience with all of the other projects that Mr. Garcia has received approval for and built and operated in this city, none of them have had parking issues, and it has been demonstrated that a majority of the people do not own motor vehicles. And I think that's an important point. And I think when you've got 14 spaces out of 16 units and not everybody with vehicles, we're not going to have a negative impact upon the neighborhood. With regard to the density, okay, the capacity, as Todd had phrased it, I guess the best thing that I can suggest to you is the application before this was a 10,000 square foot lot, and we put an approved 46 units on that piece of property. Now, every application is different, and you judge each one on its own merits. You've heard me say that over and over again. But what you did in the last application underscores what I have been saying for a long time, and what Mr. Valtudo said tonight, and that is that this city has never shied away from density. That's how it has turned this city around, and we are not concerned so much with that, but providing a site that I think works, and one that'll provide safe and affordable housing. That's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Clark. And I just want to clarify one thing, that comments were put in by the residents, that by us asking the developer here to give up the parking permits on the street for residential permit parking, that his residents will not have a right to park on the street. And if they do, they will be ticketed by the parking authority. So, that's something that, should be looked at to help ease some of the questions for parking in the area. Anyone else from the board have any comments or anything on this application? Board discussion. Anyone like to discuss this application? I mean, I've known this area for a while, and I know those buildings have been probably unattended to for about 10 to 15 years at least. And I know that building this new project in the area will make it look a lot better in that area of the city. Any other member?
What's the this is Jahaira Torres. What is the approximate projected completion date for the project?
About 18 months total.
18 months total. Yeah, just trying to think about, how long the impact of construction in the area would be.
It won't impact the neighbors for the whole 18 months.
Right. It would
Okay.
probably just be the demolition and the initial phases, not the.
And we have to do a logistics plan that satisfies Mr. Burke and make sure that everything is safe along both frontages as the construction is ongoing.
Thanks for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other member? All right. Katie, do you have I'm losing it already.
I'm good. That's okay. This
Yes,
is
thank
Katie.
you.
This is Katie Pinello, Principal Planner for the City of New Brunswick. Should the board act favorably on this application, we recommend the following conditions of approval. Compliance with the terms of the city engineering report dated December 13th, 2021. Payment of a site performance bond to the New Brunswick Department of Engineering if required. Submission of a site inspection escrow deposit for engineering inspection fees in an amount to be determined by the city engineer pursuant to Title 16, 14, 160 if required. Payment of all water and sewer connection fees to the New Brunswick Water Utility. Issuance of a road opening permit from the city engineer if required. The applicant shall schedule a pre-construction meeting with the city engineering department. Compliance with the terms of the Bignell Consulting Group dated January 18, 2022 for the project. Planning review escrow funded for all anticipated post-approval reviews. Payment of any other fees due to the city of New Brunswick related to the development or use of this project. Payment of any outstanding taxes or water sewer fees to the city of New Brunswick. Middlesex County Planning Board approval or waiver. Freehold Soil Conservation District approval or waiver. Delaware and Raritan Canal Commission approval or waiver. Submittal of approval or waiver from any additional agency having jurisdiction. File a lot consolidation deed at the direction of the city tax assessor. Submission of engineering and/or architectural plans to comply with any changes required by the planning or engineering memos or plan amendments offered at or required at the time of the hearing. Execution of a Title 39 enforcement agreement, compliance with the city's water service system ordinance. Payment of any required payment in lieu of parking fees. City council approval for planters in the right of way. Trash and recycling removal to be provided by a private hauler at no expense to the city, with a collection of at least twice per week or more as warranted. The applicant waives rights to any residential on-street parking permits. The applicant shall work with city professionals on the design of the building facade. The gas meter shall be located outside the building if approved by PSE&G. Or the applicant will work with city professionals to provide screening if they are outside. All utilities and other site improvements to be maintained by the applicant at its sole expense. All utilities to be constructed underground. All temporary encroachments into the public right-of-way shall require city council approval. All construction staging shall be done on site unless an encroachment for same into public right-of-way shall be approved by city council. Streets shall be kept clean of sediment and debris. The applicant shall cause the streets to be cleaned if directed to do so by the Director of Public Works, shall cause the streets to be cleaned as so directed. Tracking pads shall be installed at all construction exits. Replacement of damaged streets, curbs, and sidewalks per the direction of the city engineer. Installation of sidewalks at the direction of the city engineer. And the applicant is requesting preliminary and final site plan approval, as well as variances for use, floor area ratio, front yard setback to Sanford Street and Lee Avenue, side yard setback, rear yard setback, building height, building coverage, impervious coverage, off-street parking, parking within the front yard setback area, and a design waiver for required foundation plantings. That's all I've got.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
There was some discussion, and Katie, forgive me if I just missed this, about the frequency of the trash and recycling removal. I thought that during the discussion, there was some indication that the board members wanted at least removal not less than twice a week. Am I?
Yes, Aravind, I had noted at least twice per week and more as warranted.
I'm sorry. I didn't catch that. I apologize. Thank you.
Thank you, Arvin. Can I have a motion?
This is Michael Tublin. I make a motion to approve.
This is John Zimmerman. I'll
Castaneda.
second. Okay.
Sorry.
Carla, go ahead.
First. Yep.
Carla Castaneda, I'll second that.
Thank you, Carla. Okay. Charlotte McNair.
Charlotte, star 6 to unmute yourself.
You hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's okay.
Yahaira Torres.
Yes.
John Zimmerman.
Yes.
Michael Tublin.
Yes.
Carla Castaneda.
Yes.
Michael Belvin.
Yes.
John Cox.
Yes.
Thank you very much, board member.
You're welcome. Arvin.
Mr. Cox.
I do believe we have the resolution, correct?
In addition to the resolution that the board members have, the conditions that were read into the record, which will include those 3 additional conditions: the city council approval for planters in the right of way, the trash pickup and recycling pickup of not less than twice a week or more as required, and also the parking permit waiver. In addition to that, the 4th whereas will include that Mr. Johnson testified as a professional architect. Those would be the only changes to the resolution of approval that has been circulated to the board.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
This is Michael Tublin. I make a motion to approve the resolution.
Yahaira Torres, second.
Charlotte McNair.
Yes.
Yahaira Torres.
Yes.
Michael Tublin.
Yes.
Carla Castaneda.
Yes.
Michael Belvin.
Yes.
John Zimmerman.
Yes.
John Cox.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, can I just clarify, Mr. Dominguez, do you know who seconded that motion to approve the resolution?
It was Yahaira Torres.
Yeah, Yahaira Torres, yes. Okay. Before we get to the last one, does anyone need to take a quick break before we run into the next application, or are we good to go?
I'm good.
right. All right, I don't see any. So we'll go right to the next application. Marone Shadid, 206 Easton Avenue, Block 67, Lot 25, ZB-2021-12. Preliminary and final site plan application with D&C variances to demolish the existing residential structure on the site in order to construct a new 3-story mixed-use building with 1 commercial space on the ground floor and 2 residential units on the floors above. No on-street parking is proposed. Zoning District C-3B, Community Commercial Office, James F. Clarkin III, Esquire. Is there any members of the board that have a conflict with this application?
Mr. Chairman, as indicated
Yes.
earlier, believe that
Mr. Ferguson.
indicated that he would remain in conflict and hear this application.
Yes, correct. Understood. And Arvin, has proper notice for this application been submitted, and do we have the jurisdiction over this application?
Notice is proper, and this board does in fact have jurisdiction.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Clarkin, please go ahead.
Yes, good evening again, Mr. Chairman and board members. Attorney James Clarkin again appearing to the applicant of the firm of Clarkin and Vignolo. This is what I call another one of these private redevelopment cases. My client, Mr. Shadid, is seeking to demolish the existing outdated single-family dwelling on the property and replace it with a 3-story mixed-use structure with commercial use on the first floor, probably a restaurant, 90% sure of that, but not 100% sure, and then residential on the upper 2 floors. No basement is proposed. While a single-family residence is permitted in the C3B, as I am sure all of you are aware, most of the new land development along this stretch of the Easton Avenue corridor has been mixed use, and mixed use is permitted. Mr. Shadid also owns the next door property at 204 Easton Avenue. He received approval for that project several years ago, and it's remarkably similar to what is being proposed tonight, although you will hear from our architect that we will make revisions to the facade so that we don't have a cookie cutter 2 structures side by side looking the same. Like most of the lots on this side of the block, it's 25 feet wide by 100 feet in depth, and that presents the usual challenges for development when you've got a lot that's undersized for the area and width that the zone requires, as well as needing setback and coverage variances in a floor area ratio. Obviously, with a 25-foot wide lot, there's absolutely no opportunity to provide on-site parking. What is being proposed will certainly be consistent with the other newer development in the area. In fact, the applicant complies with the maximum impervious coverage limitation and is only slightly over on building coverage by 9% and only slightly over on maximum floor area. Building height conforms. We have 3 witnesses this evening. The first is Bill Doran, our architect. He'll review the elevations and floor plans. Next is Frank Farrell, our engineer, and he will discuss the proposal. And finally, James Clark and my son, who provide the planning justification for the variances. Mr. Chairman, if you have any questions or the board members, I'll field them. Otherwise, we'll go to the first witness.
Any member of the board or board professionals have questions at this time? Seeing none, call your first witness, Mr. Clarkin.
We'll call Bill Doran.
I'm here. You guys have me?
Yeah, Dan, can you swear in?
Mr. Doran, can you please?
Sorry about that. Yeah, Mr. Doran, can you please state your name, spell your last name for the record?
William Doran, D-O-R-A-N.
Mr. Doran, do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Floor is yours.
Mr. Doran, you've been before this board on numerous occasions, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
And have your credentials changed in any way since the last time you appeared before this board?
They have not.
We will accept you as a professional.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cox.
Thank you.
Bill, did you prepare the architectural elevations and floor plans that were submitted with this application?
Yes, I did.
Okay, let's first concentrate on the front facade. What will be the street appearance and what building materials are being proposed?
We are going to use a gray and white palette, gray, light gray and white and black stone on the first floor, black window trim on all the windows, a white board and batten siding as the main element on the front facade, along with a complementary white hardy plank, horizontal hardy plank on a portion of the front facade as well.
All right, in the Big Nell Planning Report, it was requested that this not be a carbon copy of 204 Eastern Avenue next door. Can you explain to the board what differences there will be in the front facades?
Well, the existing structure next door is kind of a beigey earth tones, stucco on the first floor and beige siding on the second and third floors. So I think there'll be a lot of contrast there, and both buildings will look totally different.
Are the building lines and the roof lines, how do they look?
They're similar, actually.
Okay. Is there a basement?
But I think with the different materials, they'll look very different.
All right. Is there a basement proposed?
No.
Will there be any rooftop equipment?
Yes, we in the rear of the property or the rear of the building, we have a flat roof for the last. Well, I'm not sure exactly how. About 15 feet of the rear of the second floor will be a flat roof, and we'll have all of our equipment up there.
Can you take the board through the floor plans for each of the 3 levels?
Sure. First floor will be we're proposing a restaurant use, so there'll be an entrance from Easton Avenue into the space. There'll also be a entrance to the second and third floors from there. So as you enter that area, there'll be a little vestibule, and then you'll go up steps to the second floor. The second and third floors have 3 bedroom apartments.
1 3-bedroom apartment on each level?
Correct. And each of those will have the required common area for each apartment. It'll have a separate laundry and utility room, a kitchen, and a bathroom.
Returning to the first floor, other than the 2 doors in the front, are there any other doors?
In the rear, there'll be a rear door for access for the tenant for garbage and recycling and things like that.
Okay. Is there a meter room?
There will be a meter room on the back of that first floor, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all the direct questioning I have for the witness, Mr. Chairman. He's available for yours.
Any member of the board or board professional have questions for this witness at this time? I have a question. You state there's going to be a restaurant on the first floor. Where is the hood exhaust going to be going out? Is it going to be going out through the roof? Is it going out through the back, through the front? You know, because you're going to have neighbors, and you know they're not going to want that smoke or smell blowing right into their houses or stuff. Because these are things that are close together.
That'll go up through the roof.
Okay, thank you. Any other member? Oh.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt. just
Nope, go ahead.
because of the tightness of the lot, and your question was well put, we would accept that as a voluntary condition if we're fortunate to get your approval tonight.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Any other member of the board or board professionals have questions for this witness? Seeing none, please call your next witness.
Call Frank Farrell.
Good evening.
Good evening. Dan, can you swear in the witness?
Yeah. Sorry, I was muted. Mr.
That's right.
Farrell, can you please state your name, spell your last name for the record?
Absolutely. My name is Frank. Last name Farrell, Farrell.
Mr. Farrell, do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Floor is yours.
Mr. Farrell, you've been before this board, correct?
Yes, I have.
Yes. And have your credentials changed any since the last time you appeared before this board?
No, they have not.
All right. We will accept you as an expert.
Thank you.
Frank, please start out by indicating what are the existing conditions that we're talking about here.
Absolutely. So the application before you this evening is located at 206 Easton Avenue. It is block 67, lot 25. As Mr. Clarkin had stated, it is a narrow lot with a width of 25 feet and a total lot area of 2,500 square feet. The site is currently occupied by an existing 2.5-story dwelling and various concrete surfaces, all of which will be raised for the new construction. The topography of the site generally slopes in a westerly direction, sort of toward the rear neighboring property, and a portion of it drains toward the front, toward Easton Avenue. Adjacent land uses are all mixed. They tend to be mixed use, but they're all commercial or residential uses. Easton Avenue is, as you're aware, a 38-foot wide cartway with one vehicular lane in each direction. There's parking lanes, again, in each direction. I don't believe there's any bike lanes there at the moment. And there's curbs and sidewalks are provided along both sides of the roadway. Typically between the face of the building and the curb is all concrete sidewalk.
What are the current zoning and zone requirements here?
The property is located in the C-3B zone. And I believe our planner will cover the various variances that are needed.
That's correct. Can you outline the proposed project for the board, please?
Sure. The proposed building is a 3-story structure consisting of 2 3-bedroom units, which will be located on the 2nd and 3rd floors, and 1,480 square foot restaurant use, which will be located on the 1st floor. The proposed application would have certainly no more than 10 required parking spaces. The parking calculation provided on the site plan anticipated a general retail use. The restaurant use would be based on the number of seats, and certainly we wouldn't expect it to have any more in total than the 10, the required of 10. Again, none are proposed. The site is very narrow and there's no room for parking. The 2nd and 3rd stories, as Mr. Dorn had stated, are slightly smaller in footprint than the 1st. The 1st floor extends an additional 14 feet toward the rear of the property. The roof of that 14-foot section will house the HVAC or HVAC units and act as an emergency egress path for the residents should they need to egress through the fire escape on the back of the building. Along the property's frontage, the area between the property line and the curb, again, is entirely concrete. There's no pervious areas available for the planting of street trees, and a waiver is going to be requested for the street tree requirement. It also, I would note that this is a county road, and the county does not tend to allow the planting of trees along Easton Avenue or other county facilities. No other landscaping is feasible on the site. The rear will be lawn, but there will be no significant landscaping. No transformer is proposed, and the HVAC units, as I had mentioned, will be located on the flat portion, the flat roofed portion of the building. I do not believe they will be visible from the street, certainly. And generally, they'll be located centrally on the roof so that they're not visible from the neighboring properties either. The primary pedestrian access to the building will be via the main entrance along Easton Avenue, one door for the restaurant and the second door for the proposed residential uses. An additional egress point is located at the rear, and sidewalk will connect the rear egress to the Easton Avenue right-of-way along the easterly sideline of the building. Garbage will be hauled away during off-peak times, consistent with other similar facilities in the area. I believe this is as well as 204 Easton Avenue, which is the neighboring property owned by the applicant. The refuse area is located at the rear of the building, and the garbage cans, which I believe it will be 8 to 10, is identified in the solid waste management or the solid waste report that was generated for the project, will be hauled out to the street frontage when the truck arrives by private courier. Site lighting is proposed through the installation of several building mounted fixtures. There's one located on the front. Three wall mounted fixtures are located along the side where there is sidewalk, and one fixture will be located on the rear, all compliant with the city standards for lighting. And they will certainly be fitted with shields to prevent the spillage of excess light onto neighboring properties. But I also note that the neighboring property, I don't believe, has windows below the mounting height of the lights that we're proposing. So there should be no issue there. That covers the general
All right.
Site elements.
Can you address stormwater management, please?
Absolutely. The site, the development rather, is not a major development as defined by the city's ordinance. It is neither an acre of disturbance nor is it a quarter acre of new impervious surface. As I had mentioned previously, the site generally slopes in a westerly direction toward the rear of the site. This development actually gives us the sort of unique opportunity to, rather than continue to shed water onto the neighboring property, capture the roof runoff and direct it toward Easton Avenue, where the county's stormwater management system is more than adequate to handle the de minimis increase in flow as a result of the 900 square foot increase in impervious coverage. So in summary, the stormwater management for the site is to redirect a small portion of the runoff toward the county facility rather than continue to drain onto the neighboring property. The increase is de minimis and no formal detention or mitigation system is required.
All right. Have you had an opportunity to review the Big Nail planning report, which is dated October 18 of 2021?
I believe I have, yes.
And turning everyone's attention to paragraph 9, the plan review comments, as we customarily do, you'll find them on the bottom of page 2. And item A, Frank will obtain all of the necessary governmental approvals.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, board members, with regard to item B, our planner will address that. With regard to item C, I'm advised by the client that we think it's a 90% potential that it'll be a restaurant as opposed to some other commercial use. Item D requests that we improve the appearance of the front of the building, and perhaps we'll hear from Todd later, and we can have a discussion along those lines. Item E, Mr. Farrell has just completed his testimony with regard to storing and disposing trash and recyclables. We also have testimony that there will be an interior meter room. In terms of how we handle deliveries to the restaurant, it's just a necessary evil, but it's got to come from the street and through the front door like everybody else on the Eastern Avenue corridor. With regard to item H, we would certainly be happy to comply with the requirement to screen the trash area on all sides. Item I, we've testified that there's no basement proposed. Item J, we would ask for a deferral on this. If we're fortunate to get a restaurant use, we'll have to go to the building department. We will have to indicate how the site is going to lay out, how the floor plan will lay out in terms of seating areas and storage, etc. Item K, yes, no parking is provided on the site. This applicant like everyone else from here on in, and tonight's the first night this is happening for all of us in the development community, there will be payment in lieu of parking, and this applicant will be no exception. With regard to item L, the applicant would comply if sidewalk needs to be repaired or replaced. If we can get the county to agree to a street tree in item M, we're certainly happy to provide it. I don't think this area would lend itself to a planter bed, but I will certainly leave that up to the staff to either say yes or no to. In terms of item N, a concept sign, we simply don't have a tenant, so it's tough for us, but I can tell you that the sign will comply with all of the ordinance requirements that you have for facade signs. Item O, we're happy to see there's no objection to the submission waivers. Frank, have you had an opportunity to review the city engineer's report?
Yes.
Is there anything in that report that the applicant cannot handle?
I do not believe so.
And the recommendations that were made, we can certainly agree to those as conditions of a hopeful approval?
Double check. I believe so. I think the only item to clarify would be the stormwater management comment where we should demonstrate compliance with 10.2. As described in my testimony, there is no stormwater management provision on the site. There's certainly, I don't believe, warrants one, given the de minimis increase in flow. If there's more calculation, I believe we provided calculation for the 2, 10, and 100-year storms, and the city ordinance in double checking this, you also require the 25 and the 50 be calculated. We can certainly provide that calculation and show that the same trend continues with those storms as well.
All right. Mr. Chairman, board members, similar to the last application, we also received the construction official, Mr. Grabelny's items dated October 20th, 2021, and the applicant would be happy to comply with those items as well. That concludes Mr. Farrell's testimony. He's available for questions.
Any member of the board or professional staff have any questions for this witness?
Hey, this is Katie, professional planner. I just wanted to confirm. I'd heard that the trash and recycling pickup will be by a private hauler. Is that correct?
Yes, Katie, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, Dan Burke, city engineer. I have a question for the applicant's professional.
Sure, Mr. Burke, please go ahead.
In speaking about the stormwater, 10.2 refers to the rate of runoff, that it will not increase, that you're going to detain enough so that you do not increase. And that's basically what that segment of the city standards are. And we're asking for compliance with that. And with regards to your comment about runoff being directed to the county right-of-way, could you explain how is it? I don't see any information on the plan showing me how it's going to be directed. Will it be subsurface, or do you plan to run it over the sidewalks?
No, I believe it'll run over the sidewalk, as the county doesn't tend to permit penetrations to the curb line, which sometimes you'd see roof leaders or some pumps or things like that through the curb face, but it's my understanding that the county would not be inclined to approve that. As a result, the way that we're achieving that actually is the proposed building is simply a larger footprint than the existing building. And as a result, the roof captures more runoff, and the roof leaders and gutters will be directed out toward the front of the property.
So you might have a freezing condition on the concrete sidewalk surfaces in times of similar to this time of the year, based on what you're projecting.
I don't believe that it's significantly different than what you'd experience now, but that is accurate.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Any other member of the board or professional staff have any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to your next witness, Mr. Clarkin.
That'll be James Clarkin IV, our planner.
Mr. Clarkin, can you please
Yes.
state your name, spell your last name for the record?
James Clarkin, Clarkin.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Floor is yours.
Thank you.
Mr. Clarkin, you have been before this board in the past, haven't you?
I have, yes.
Yes, and have your credentials changed at all since the last time you were before this board?
They have not.
All right, we will accept you as an expert witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have you had an opportunity to review the application, the engineering plans, and the reports from the board's professionals and the architectural plans?
Yes, I have.
What is on the subject property now, and what are we proposing in summary?
So as mentioned by the previous two witnesses, currently two-story residential home located in your C3B commercial office district. We're going to knock that down and replace it with a three-story mixed use. First floor commercial, most likely restaurant, and then a 3-bedroom apartment on one each on the second and third floors. The proposed use is permitted in the zone.
What variances does the applicant need in order to be able to perform this project?
So we require a D4 variance for the increase in the permitted floor area ratio, along with various C bulk variances for existing and new conditions, as well as parking and a loading variance.
All right, let's start with the D4 variance for FAR. Can you address that, please?
Sure. So the zone calls for 1.2 to 1, and we are proposing 1.54 to 1. As I already noted, it's permitted in the zone, but in order to fit this project onto the small footprint of 2,500 square feet, it creates the need for a de minimis increase in the permitted FAR. So the proposed project is about 856 square feet over the requirement, but that will be spread across the 3 floors. And in addition to that, the 300 square feet of that overage is actually located on the first floor in the rear for storage. So we actually see that as a positive because we think that extra storage space will reduce the frequency of deliveries to the first floor commercial. I believe the site can accommodate the increase in FAR as there is a real world example exactly next door. It's a mixed use 3-story on a same size lot. So it really shows that our project can be achieved. It doesn't overburden the lot or the site. And as far as we know, it has not caused any negative impact to the community or the neighborhood. And I would add further that even if we are able to comply with the FAR, it would not really change the development in a material way. So the building may be less deep, but therefore would have less functionality and less value and probably no storage on the first floor. So we believe our proposed project is functional on a small lot that can handle this de minimis increase in the FAR. So approving a D4 variance furthers the following municipal land use law zoning provisions in my professional opinion. So I know purposes A, E, and I. So A is for guiding appropriate use or development that promotes public health, morals, and welfare. E for promoting appropriate population densities and concentrations, which we achieve here by being very similar density to nearby uses. And finally, I for promoting a desirable promoting a desirable visual environment via creative development techniques.
All right, now that we've addressed the use, the FAR, can we discuss the setback and the parking variances?
Yes, I believe Mr. Farrow touched on this, but so we're seeking several bulk variances. So we have lot area, 5,000 square feet is needed where we have 2,500 today, 50 feet for lot width where we have 25 feet today. And then the front yard setback requirement is 15 feet where we propose 3 feet, which also exists today. So on top of that, new conditions are side yard setbacks. So for both the one side and both sides. So on the one side, you're supposed to provide 5 feet, we're providing 2. And then for both sides, you need 10 feet where we're only proposing 5. On top of that, we have building coverage of 59.2% where 50% is required by the zone. And same for impervious coverage where we are proposing 81.5% and the zone calls for 75%. Finally, we're seeking the parking and loading variance. We propose none, so no parking, no loading zone where the zone calls for 10 and 1 loading space. So all the lot requirement bulk variances can be granted under the C1 hardship variance test, and the parking and loading variances can be granted under the C2 flexible bulk variance test. So for the hardship, due to the size of the lot, combined with the fact that we are not able to purchase property on either side of us to alleviate these variances, our project is under hardship to comply. So we can't alleviate, we have no real mechanism to alleviate the lot size or the lot width variance. If we were to comply with the 15-foot front yard setback variance, we wouldn't really have a viable project. And it would also be way out of the character of Easton Avenue by upsetting the retail aspects that makes Easton Avenue so walkable today. Further, if we comply with all the bulk variances together, along with providing the necessary parking on the site, we would not have a usable building at all. So this is basically down to the 25-foot width of the lot. I mean, simply just providing egress and ingress for a parking lot would take up the entire frontage of the lot and really leave us no space for a building of any use or functionality. And also, as I mentioned, upsetting the character of Easton Avenue. So for those reasons I just outlined, we cannot provide the required parking on-site nor loading space. Many similar uses on Easton Avenue and throughout the city really utilize the on-street parking. We do have a bus route. I believe at the corner there's a bus stop. I mentioned the walkability of Easton Avenue, and other modes of transportation really counter the lack of off-street parking here. And we are proposing the same for our project. And also there is space in the rear for bike parking. So these variances may be granted with respect to the positive criteria under both the C1 and C2 tests, as we've proved our hardship, and also promoting the same zoning purposes I outlined for the D4 variance.
How about the negative criteria with respect to all of the requested variances?
Yes, so to wrap it all up, the negative criteria is achieved for the D4 variance, as all the bulk variances can be granted without any detriment, much less a substantial detriment to the public good. The proposed development is consistent with other mixed uses in the immediate area. Mixed use projects very similar to ours in size and scope, and parking really, with no parking, can be found on Easton Avenue and throughout the city. In fact, you could probably find several that are much larger in size and scope than our project, that have not caused any substantial detriment, and in my opinion have actually brought substantial positives to the public good, and I believe our project will as well. So in conclusion, the positive criteria substantially outweighs any negative criteria that can be perceived to our project. The variances can be granted without substantial detriment to the city's zone plan, master plan, or the public good.
Thank you. That concludes this direct testimony, Mr. Chairman. He's available for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any members of the board or professional staff that have any questions for this witness? Mr. Clarkin, Senior. As far as parking goes, I know Easton Avenue is a county road, and I know it isn't a parking permit road, but I believe the surrounding areas are, and I'm not sure if if Easton Avenue is granted parking permits, but if they are, would they be willing to give up the right to parking permits in the area?
Mr. Chairman, my client would like to be heard on that issue. He's quite concerned about it. He is in another room in my office because he's got a medical condition. I'm going to bring him in if you'll just give me about 30 seconds.
Sure, not a problem.
Thank you. He's coming right now, Mr. Chairman.
Sure, no problem. Let him take your time.
Hello, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you.
Good. Let's have Dan. Can you swear in this witness? You can stay seated, Mr. Shadid.
Mr. Shadid, can you please state your name, spell your last name for the record?
The last name is Chedid.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
So help me God, yes.
Floor is yours.
Please tell the board why it is you don't want to give up the parking permit, because it's very detrimental to the viability of the project. I've been a landlord for a long time, and I know the area over there is all occupied by students. And students, usually like in an apartment, like a 3-bedroom apartment, you would find people, like 2 people of the group, they would want the parking permits. If we don't supply them with the parking permits, they would walk away. And I would end up with a vacant apartment, vacant building, with high taxes, property taxes, and there is no way I can survive with the high mortgages and the maintenance fees and all that. There is no way I can survive. So
Yes,
the board.
Okay, I understand that, Mr. Shadid, but you're asking us to, make what you have there now and have a more intense use for that area with a restaurant and then the apartments. How many students do you have in that building right now?
4.
4. When it's rebuilt, how many students do you feel are going to rent the apartments upstairs? What's going to be the total occupancy?
I would say about 6 to 7 maximum.
Okay, and then you have to also put in with the restaurant, correct?
Correct, sir.
How many parking permits do you receive right now from the parking authority for that whole building?
I think 3.
3. All right. Dan, I don't know if this goes, if you would have this, and you probably don't have the answer to this one either. Do you know how the parking authority gives out the permits? Like how many per thing? I think it goes by rooms and stuff, correct? Or apartments or dwell space?
Are you asking me?
No, I was asking.
Oh, sorry. I thought I was speaking. Chairman
Nope.
Cox, can you give me just a moment to see if I can dig up this information? Hold on.
Yeah, sure, absolutely, Dan. Thank you.
Hey, John, I live in the 6th Ward, obviously. And so we have 2 residents and 2 visitors permits per house.
Yeah, but John, I think sometimes though, when because I know my father years ago owned a business up on Hamilton Street. He used to get some for upstairs, then the visitor permits for upstairs, but he also got him visitors permits for the restaurant or the bar area of his thing too. That's what I'm concerned about, is getting too many extra permits, because we already know that area is crowded.
Right.
Chairman Cox, per
Yes.
the NBPA website, it's a maximum of 2 tenant permits per dwelling unit.
So then he would.
So this building as a 2-family would be eligible for up to 4 permit spaces.
And what about
As is.
Plus the visitors.
and plus visitors, correct?
I think 1 visitor and 2.
10 by tenants, blah, 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 blah. Tenant. All houses are entitled to a maximum of 2 visitor permits. So I think that is universal. So whether it has 1 unit or it has 100 units, I think you're only entitled to the 2, because it says all houses are entitled to a maximum of 2 visitor permits. So I think that whether this is a single or a 2 units, it's still maximum of 2 visitor permits.
All right. Well, then I guess where I'm coming at is due to the fact that you're intensifying the use of this property. Would you be willing to leave your permits at what you get now and not increase them with the intense use of your property?
It's a difficult question. I wish I can say, I wish I could say yes comfortably, to be honest with you, because, I would need at least for each apartment two permits. And for the business, one permit.
Yeah.
For the owner is fine with me, and,
Yeah.
I think you made a mistake. I'm sorry? Yeah? Okay, if this is it, whatever you propose, I would accept it. Mr. Cox, I thought, quite honestly, my client, okay, like any other businessman, okay, would like to maximize the prospect of success. Correct. I thought that your suggestion was, in all honesty, a reasonable compromise.
Okay, thank you. Does any other member of the board or staff professional have questions or comments for anyone? Seeing none.
So,
thank you. Oh,
Chairman Cox, can I ask for clarification on that? So does that mean that the applicant is agreeing to the compromise position, or because there wasn't really sort of an affirmative statement made there?
I would agree to it.
Okay. Just
so
making
just
sure.
for the record, you're going to agree to keep the permits at what you receive now?
Yeah, at 4, I guess, right?
Well, I think you said it was.
It would be 2 resident and 2 visitor.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Shadid. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Let me switch with you.
All right. Okay. Mr. Clarkin, do you have anything else?
I do not. That concludes our direct case.
All right. Then we will open it up to the public. Dan, can you make a list of speakers for the public, please?
Thank you, Chairman Cox. If there's anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this application, please state your name, and we'll put you on a list of speakers, and you'll have 5 minutes to comment on this application.
I'm Joseph Boylan. I'd like to speak on this.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? If you're on the phone, *6 to unmute yourself. Little microphone button if you're on the computer.
Julio Mora.
Okay. Anyone else? Last call. Seeing none. Chairman Cox, we have 2. First commenter is Mr. Joseph Boylan. Mr. Boylan, can you please state your name, spell your last name for the record?
My name's Joseph Boylan. It's Boylan.
Thank you. Mr. Boylan, do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, you may proceed.
Aside from the slight variances he needs, I have 2 problems with his lack of a loading zone and lack of sufficient parking. I understand that the city has payment in lieu of parking, which helps the parking authority. It does nothing for the tenants on Easton Avenue. Right now, my business is on Easton Avenue. With the number of restaurants, generally, I'm probably 30 yards from both of his properties, and every day there are delivery trucks that are parked either blocking my driveway, or they just pull into my driveway and dump oil, take up half a dozen spots while they make deliveries up and down Easton Avenue. So being able to pay the city for parking is all well and good. It doesn't affect the direct problem that affects my business daily. And the same thing is, aside from the loading zone, is the parking. in general, like everyone notices, Eastern Avenue is primarily student housing. A 3-bedroom apartment will more than likely have 2 cars in it. You know, as everybody recognizes, there is no parking on Eastern Avenue. You know, and these cars, usually I end up having to tow from my lot. You know, it doesn't, when we needed parking, you know, we had to buy the lot next door and tear it down. I understand that's not possible here, even though he owns 204 and 206. You know, I just like to have some type of resolution to how he will not have an adverse effect on the rest of the properties in his neighborhood. And I don't see how that can happen. And I'm just wondering if there's any suggestions he can make to not affect anyone else on his block. That's my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Borland.
All right. Next up, Mr. Julio Mora. Mr. Mora, can you please state your name, spell your last name for the record?
Julio Mora, M-O-R-A.
Mr. Mora, do you swear from tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
All right, floor is yours.
So just have 3 quick comments. Regarding the HVAC units that were mentioned and are noted on the engineering plans, I believe it's the engineering plans. I believe that it was testified that they would be enough distance away from the property line that it wouldn't be an issue to the neighboring residents, but there's also a 10-foot setback. I couldn't really tell if you were at it, if you were like just 10 feet from it. Is it 10 feet from the property line, the HVAC units? I believe there's 3 of them proposed.
Mr. Clark, would you like me to field that question?
Yes, Frank, if you would, please.
The HVAC units, as they're shown on the drawing right now, will not be how they're ultimately constructed. We will revise the plan, and they will be constructed more centrally located in the along that rear of the building, and they will in fact be 10 feet from the property lines. I believe that we will comply with that ordinance requirement.
Okay, makes sense. And then just 2 more things. Just regarding there was some discussion about the sign. One, I just wanted to make more so of a recommendation, but if the sign could be, the rendering kind of makes it look like the sign is, since it's so close to the 2nd floor window, kind of gives the impression that it's advertising the 2nd floor unit. I would just recommend that it be more closer to that window, similar to how 204 is set up. I mean, 204 still goes a little bit onto like the floor base, but if it can be as close so that it doesn't give off the impression that it's advertising the 2nd floor. Just a recommendation. And then just one more thing is that I believe the existing sign area requirement is 1 square foot per 1 foot of front facade width. And I believe this one is like 12 or so. So he would be restricted to a 12 square foot sign if he chooses to go with if the business chooses to go with a facade sign, which is pretty small. Is that do you foresee that as an issue? I know businesses usually like to go with something bigger.
We will comply with the sign ordinance in terms of the sign area.
Okay. And then just one more comment. I know you mentioned that currently you're like 90% sure that it's going to be a restaurant, but but that it could be just general retail. The owner is aware, because I know in the past we've had some issues where we've identified some tenants that have gone into some new developments without having obtaining their change of use permits from our office. But is the owner aware that the tenant will have to apply? If and when there is a business tenant, they will have to apply for their own.
1 minute.
We're certainly aware of the requirement and it'll be complied with.
Okay, sounds good. And that was all my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Yes, thank you. Dan, there's nobody else on the from the public,
No.
correct?
No, there
All
is
right.
not.
Thank you. We'll close the public portion of the meeting. Mr. Clarkin, do you have a summary statement you'd like to say?
I do. I'll be brief, Mr. Chairman. There's one sign issue that was left with regard to lowering it, and we'll give consideration to that. But this facade is a little bit different than the one at 204. But like I said, we'll give it some consideration. The more weighty comments came from Mr. Boylan. I have two responses to that. Number one, if the city of New Brunswick is going to require compliance with the parking standard and the loading standard, then this city will never, ever improve the Easton Avenue corridor. This city has always been forward looking, all right? Sometimes with improvement comes detriment. Bottom line is, under the municipal land use law, it's only substantial detriment that you have to be concerned with. Anytime you grant the variance, there's by necessity detriment. But if the detriment is minimal and not substantial, all right, then the applicant has met the proofs in order to obtain that variance. And just from a fairness perspective, I don't know how in 2022 we can penalize a property owner seeking to improve his property and deny him that opportunity, okay, when everyone else, or almost everyone else, with a similar size lot, okay, has no parking and no loading zone. And I just ask you to consider that as you're deliberating on this case. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clarkin. We have board discussion. Any member of the board have anything to say?
Yeah, this is John Zimmerman. I'm well aware of the parking problems on Easton Avenue, and I think Mr. Shadid is making us a really good faith idea to keep the parking the same as he has now, even though he's going to be having more tenants. So he's making the effort to leave the parking as it is, which is unbelievable in this day and age, because he has a right to get more permits and he has the right to rent his building out to people, as you know, as many as it can fit. So for him to do that, I think it's a very good idea. And like Mr. Clarkin said, Easton Avenue, it is what it is. If you're going to have a restaurant there, or you're going to have a bar there or something, there is nowhere to put parking lots anymore on Easton Avenue. So they're going to have to live with, doing business without parking. And a lot of restaurants and businesses are doing that now, and they're surviving. So I know down in the future, across from Mr. Boylan, they haven't even started the big development there that's going to be across the street from him. And that's going to be another issue. But we approved that a few years ago, and it hasn't even broken ground yet. So the parking is what it is on Easton Avenue, and I don't feel we should penalize Mr. Shadid for that also. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other member of the board have any discussion? Comments? Seeing none. Katie, can you please give us a rundown of the conditions if we are to act in favor of this application?
Yes, good evening. This is Katie, Principal Planner for the City of New Brunswick. Should the board act favorably on this application, we recommend the following conditions of approval. Compliance with the terms of the city engineering report dated December 8th, 2021 for the project. Payment of a site performance bond to the New Brunswick Department of City Engineering if required. Submission of a site inspection escrow deposit for engineering inspection fees in an amount to be determined by the city engineer if required. Payment of all water and sewer connection fees to the New Brunswick Water Utility. Issuance of a road opening permit from the city engineer if required. The applicant shall schedule a pre-construction meeting with the city engineering department. Compliance with the terms of the Bignell Consulting Group report dated December 15, 2021. Planning review escrow fund for all anticipated post-approval reviews. Payment of any other fees due to the city of New Brunswick related to development or use of this project. Payment of any outstanding taxes or water sewer fees to the city of New Brunswick, Middlesex County Planning Board approval or waiver, Freehold Soil Conservation District approval or waiver, Delaware and Raritan Canal Commission approval or waiver, submittal of approval or waiver of same for any additional agency having jurisdiction, submission of engineering and or architectural plans to comply with any changes required by the planning or engineering memos or plan amendments offered or required at the time of the hearing, compliance with the city's water service system ordinance, payment of required payment in lieu of parking fees. The applicant shall maintain the current number of residential on-street parking permits, which is 2 residential and 2 visitor. Trash and recycling pickup shall be provided by a private hauler at no expense to the city. Exhaust for any restaurant use shall be vented from the roof. All utilities and other site improvements to be maintained by the applicant at its sole expense. All utilities to be constructed underground. All temporary encroachments into the public right-of-way shall require city council approval. All construction staging shall be done on site unless an encroachment for same into the public right-of-way shall be approved by city council. Streets shall be kept clean of sediment and debris. The applicant shall cause the streets to be cleaned if directed to do so by the Director of Public Works shall cause the streets to be cleaned as so directed. Tracking pads shall be installed at all construction exits. Replacement of damaged streets, curbs, and sidewalks per the direction of the city engineer. Installation of sidewalks at the direction of the city engineer. And let's just see what the variances are. Preliminary and final site plan approval is requested, as well as a D4 FAR variance, front yard setback, side yard setback, building coverage, off-street parking, and loading. And there's existing conditions for lot area and lot width, and a design waiver for foundation plantings. And that's all I've got.
Impervious coverage?
Building coverage and impervious coverage?
Yes, both.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to confirm with Ms. Pinella that, and again, I apologize, Ms. Pinella, there was a condition that the cooking exhaust should be vented to the roof level.
Yep.
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, and that was in there, and also that the applicant voluntarily waives on-street parking passes except for 2 residential and 2 visitor passes.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, good.
Okay. Thank you. Do I have a motion?
This is John Zimmerman. I'll make a motion to approve.
Carla Castaneda, I'll second.
Charlotte McNair,
Yes.
Yahaira Torres,
Yes.
John Zimmerman,
Yes.
Michael Tublin,
Yes.
Carla Castaneda,
Yes.
Michael Belvin,
Yes.
John Cox.
Yes.
Thank you very much, board members.
You're welcome. Arvin, I
Don't run
believe
so fast. We have the resolution.
I'm not going
Yeah.
anywhere.
Arvin, I do believe we have a resolution for this.
We
and
do.
we've all received it. I guess you just have to make those couple changes to it.
Yeah, there are 2 additional conditions that will be incorporated into the resolution the board members have. If the board feels that those conditions being incorporated with the resolution, a motion would be appropriate, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Arvin. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
Yahaira Torres, move to approve the resolution.
Thank you.
Michael Tublin, I second the motion.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Charlotte McNair,
Yes.
Yahaira Torres,
Yes.
Michael Tublin,
Yes.
Carla Castaneda,
Yes.
Michael Belvin,
Yes.
John Zimmerman,
Yes.
John Zimmerman,
Yes.
John Cox.
Yes.
Once again, thank
All
you.
right.
Have a good night.
Have a good night. All right, we'll open it up to other matters of interest to the public. If there is anyone from the public that wishes to speak to us, Mr. Dominguez, can you please make a list?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Cox. If there's anyone from the public, anyone at all who wishes to speak, addressing the board for up to 5 minutes, please announce yourself and we'll put you on a list of speakers. If you're on the phone, you'll have to unmute yourself, press *6. If you are on, on the computer, use the little microphone button. So anyone?
Hi, Charlie Cradaville here.
All right, Charlie Cradaville. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to address the board? Last call. Seeing none, Chairman Cox, we have one speaker, Mr. Charlie Cradaville. Mr.
Charlie, the
Cradaville,
floor is
can
yours.
you, okay,
No.
well, can you please state your name, spell your last name for the
Sure.
record?
Sure, Charlie Cradaville, Kratovil.
And I just want to clarify this with Arvin. For regular public comment, do people need to be sworn in? I feel like we do it like in
Just public
something.
comment.
I don't.
That's
What? Just not. They don't have to be sworn in.
They do not.
No.
Okay. All right, Mr. Cradaville, floor is yours.
Thank you, and I will tell the truth regardless. I wanted to congratulate the new members of the board, wish them all the best, have some constructive input, hopefully. I think it would be a best practice to post the video recordings of these meetings on the city's Vimeo account, the same place that the city council recordings are posted. I still scratching my head trying to discern why those aren't automatically posted. I know that they're obviously public records. People can request them if they want. As a matter of fact, I'm broadcasting tonight's meeting live on New Brunswick Today, YouTube and Facebook and stuff like that. But to the extent that that might not work every time, you have proper recordings, I'd ask that you please just post them so that the public can enjoy them and learn about what these boards are doing. I hope you can also leave the application documents up on the site a little longer and maybe include some more relevant content, such as like the redevelopment plans that I don't believe are on the city website yet. And finally, I was caught off guard a little bit that you changed your meeting time to 6:30 instead of 7 tonight. And so I would just ask, Chairman, if you could please direct the board secretary to add my email address to the list of emails that get, a copy of the agenda, just so I know if there is going to be a change or a special meeting or something like that. I don't always, read the fine print legal notices of the Home News Tribune, but I would still like to know if for instance, you do change the time or the method or location of a meeting. So do you think you could do that for me, Chairman, and ask Mr. Dominguez to inform me if there's going to be future changes like that?
I will ask him. Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Arvin.
The municipal land use law governs the notice, and the Open Public Meetings Act governs how notice can be affected. As board chair, you can't change the municipal land use law or the Open Public Meetings Act. So
okay.
I understand and take it under advisement, Mr. Cradaville, but the chairman can't be put in a position where he's changing the law.
I'm certainly not asking Chairman Cox to pass any legislation or change the municipal land use law. I'm just asking to receive courtesy via email, copy of the agenda when it's ready for the meetings of this board. I don't see anything wrong with that. I certainly think it's, within the chairman's power to ask that the secretary do that. And it wouldn't be terribly hard to accomplish, and it would be a nice gesture to, somebody who's, I think, safe to say, a regular at these meetings. So that's my position. I hope you can make that happen for me. And that's all. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Credible. Have a good night.
Chairman Cox, there are no more speakers.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Or motion to adjourn?
A second voice vote is appropriate.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Have a good night, guys.
All right.